Hi guys, tonight we drift quietly into the world of a medieval Christmas night. The sun is sinking behind the hills. The air is turning very cold. It feels like tiny needles of ice against your cheeks. The wind is coming off the empty fields like a cold river, finding every gap in your woolen clothes. You can hear the dry grass snapping under your heavy boots as you walk. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want to let me know where you are listening from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing those little snapshots of the world. Now dim the lights and let the story begin. You are standing at the very edge of the village. The world is becoming very quiet and very dark. Behind you, the small houses are huddled together. They are made of wood and thick mud, with roofs made of dried straw. From the top of each roof, a thin line of grey smoke rises into the cold air. It smells of burning oak wood and damp earth. The smell is thick and heavy, the kind of smell that stays in your hair and your clothes. It is a smell that means home. But tonight, you are not inside by the fire. You are out here, on the edge of the world, where the fields meet the dark woods. This is the first real frost of the winter. It is not just a little bit of cold. It is a deep, biting cold that makes the ground as hard as stone. You look down at your feet. The grass is no longer green. It is covered in a thin, white coat of ice. In the fading light, the fields look like they have been dusted with silver sugar. When you take a step, the frozen grass makes a sharp, crisp sound. It sounds like breaking glass. Each step is loud in the evening air. You move slowly, feeling the weight of your boots. They are made of thick leather, tied with long strings of hide. Inside, you have stuffed them with dry moss to keep your toes from freezing. It is a simple trick, but it works. The moss keeps the warmth of your skin close to you. You pull your mantle tighter around your neck. A mantle is a very simple piece of clothing. It is just a large, heavy square of wool. It has no sleeves and no buttons. You have pinned it at your shoulder with a small piece of sharpened bone. The wool is rough and a bit scratchy against your skin, but it is very thick. It has the smell of sheep and rain. This mantle is your shield against the winter. As the wind blows harder, you wrap the fabric across your chest. You can feel the warmth of your own breath hitting the wool. It creates a small, warm space just for you. Tonight is a special night. It is the start of the midwinter season. In these old times, people call this the time of the long dark. A simple fact of history, and that people in the Middle Ages did not just see Christmas as one day. To them, it was a long turning point. They saw the sun getting lower and lower in the sky every day. They watched the shadows get longer. They worried that the sun might keep going down and never come back. So, when the first frost arrived and the big dark began, they stayed awake. They kept watch. They wanted to be sure that the light would return to the world. You are the watchman tonight. While the rest of the village is getting ready to sleep, you are starting your work. You carry a long wooden staff in one hand to help you walk on the slippery ground. In your other hand, you carry a pricket. A pricket is a very simple tool for the night. It is a small piece of wood with a sharp metal spike on the top. You push a thick candle made of beeswax onto the spike so it stays firm. You have not lit it yet. You want to save the flame for when the moon goes behind the clouds. For now, you use the light of the stars. The sky is a deep, dark blue, almost black. There are no clouds at all, because there are no big city lights and no glowing signs. The stars are very bright. They look like thousands of tiny white fires burning in the deep. You look up and feel very small. The world feels giant and empty. You can see the white path of the stars stretching from one side of the sky to the other. It is so bright that it casts a faint, blue shadow behind you on the frozen ground. You walk along the boundary of the village. This is where the gardens end and the wildwoods begin. You see the wooden fences that keep the pigs and the cows safe. The wood of the fence, it's silver with frost. You reach out and touch the top rail. It is so cold, it almost feels hot. Your fingers tingle. You pull them back and tuck your hand into the folds of your woolen mantle. You have to be careful. In the winter, the cold is a quiet enemy. It does not make a sound, but it can take the strength from your body if you are not careful. You stop for a moment and stand perfectly still. You want to listen to the night. In our world, there is always noise. There are cars, or the hum of a fridge, or the sound of a phone. But here, in the middle of this winter night, there is a silence that is very heavy. It is a silence that you can almost feel in your ears. You hear the soft whoosh of the wind as it moves through the bare branches of the oak trees. The trees have no leaves now. They look like giant black hands reaching up to the stars. You hear a small twig snap far away in the woods. Perhaps it is a deer looking for a place to sleep. Perhaps it is just the wood cracking in the cold. You do not feel afraid. You feel like you are part of the night. You are the one who is awake to see the beauty that everyone else misses. You reach into a small leather pouch hanging from your belt. You find a little piece of dried apple. This is a treat you saved from the autumn harvest. The apple is chewy and very sweet. It tastes like the sun and the warm days of the summer. As you chew it, you think about how hard everyone has worked to get ready for this winter. The barns are full of grain. The wood piles are stacked high against the walls of the houses. The people are inside, lying on beds of straw, covered in furs and wool. They are safe because the village has prepared, and they are safe because you are out here, walking the line between the warmth of the fire and the cold of the frost. The moon begins to rise over the edge of the forest. It is a big, round moon, the color of a pale yellow pearl. As it climbs higher, the world changes. The shadows of the trees stretch out across the snow like long, thin fingers. The frost on the ground starts to sparkle. It looks like the earth is covered in tiny diamonds. You watch your breath turn into a white cloud in front of your face. It hangs in the air for a second before the wind carries it away. Each breath is a little puff of warmth in the freezing night. You think about the long nights ahead. The 12 days of Christmas are coming soon. There will be big fires and loud songs. There will be meat roasting on the spit and the sound of bells. But tonight, it is just the frost. It is the quiet beginning of the story. You feel a sense of peace. The world is resting. The plants are sleeping under the ice. The animals are huddling together in the dark barns. You are the guardian of this peace. You take a long, slow breath of the cold air. It smells clean. It smells of ice and old stone. You turn away from the woods and start to walk back towards the first row of houses. Your job has just begun, and the night is very long. But you have your thick mantle, your sturdy staff, and the bright stars above to guide your way. You are ready for the watch. You push open the heavy oak door of the great hall. It is so thick and heavy that it takes the strength of your whole body to move it. The iron hinges groan a little, a slow, deep sound that echoes in the quiet. As soon as you step inside, the biting cold of the winter night stays behind you. The air in here is different. It is thick and heavy with the smell of wood smoke and dried herbs. It feels like a warm blanket being wrapped around your shoulders. You let out a long breath, and for the first time in hours, you do not see it turn into a white cloud. The room is big, much bigger than the small mud houses of the village. The ceiling is so high that the top of the room is lost in the shadows, where the light of the fire cannot reach. You walk toward the center of the room. The floor is not made of stone or wood. It is covered in a thick layer of rushes. Rushes are long, thin stems of green plants that grow near the river. In the summer, they were gathered and dried. Now, they cover the floor to keep it warm and to soak up any spills. As you walk, the rushes make a soft, dry crunching sound under your boots. It is a comforting sound, like walking on a bed of dry leaves. You can smell something sweet hidden in the rushes. It is the scent of meadow sweet and lavender. These are dried flowers that the servants have scattered on the floor to make the room smell nice for the Christmas season. This great hall is the heart of the whole castle. A simple fact about this place is that it is the one room where everyone comes together. During the day, the Lord and Lady sit at the top end on a high platform, but at night, especially during the 12 days of Christmas, the space belongs to everyone. The servants, the guards, and the workers all gather here to stay warm and share the light. Right now, it is quiet because the big feast has not yet begun. Only a few servants are moving about, their shadows dancing on the stone walls in the orange light of the hearth. The hearth is a giant stone fireplace in the middle of the floor. There is no chimney like you might see in a modern house. Instead, the smoke rises up to the high roof and finds its way out through a small hole in the wood. You see two other men struggling with a long piece of timber. You go over to help them. This is how the tables are made here. They are not solid pieces of furniture that stay in one place. They are called trestle tables. A trestle is a simple wooden frame, shaped like a big letterer. You grab one end of a heavy oak board. The wood is rough and cold to the touch. You can feel the grain of the wood under your fingers, the lines where the tree grew many years ago. Together, you lift the board and rest it across two of the wooden trestles. You do this again and again, lining them up to make one very long table that stretches from one end of the hall to the other. This way of making tables is very clever. It means that when the feast is over and the dancing begins, the tables can be taken apart and pushed against the walls to make room. You run your hand along the top of the wood. It has been scrubbed clean with sand and water until it is smooth. You think about all the people who will sit here tomorrow. They will be loud and happy. Their faces red from the heat of the fire. But for now, the wood is just a quiet, empty space waiting for the food and the drink. Next, you help a young girl carry in a heavy basket of wax candles. These are not the cheap candles made of animal fat that the villagers use. These are fine beeswax candles, the color of pale honey. When you pick one up, it feels smooth and a bit sticky. It has a light, sweet smell, like a summer field full of bees. You begin to place them into iron holders that hang from the walls. Each holder is a simple circle of metal with sharp spikes to hold the candles steady. You have to stand on a small wooden stool to reach them. As you work, you look at the walls. They are made of big, grey stones, each one cut by hand. In some places, there are colorful cloths hanging on the walls to keep out the drafts. These cloths show pictures of brave knights and green forests, but in the dim light, the colors look deep and dark. You take a moment to stand still and look at the fire. The logs are giant, the size of a man's waist. They have been burning 4 hours, and the middle of the pile is a glowing mountain of bright red coals. Sometimes a log shifts, and a shower of tiny orange sparks flies up toward the ceiling. They look like little stars that live only for a second before they vanish. The heat from the fire is so strong that it makes your skin tingle. It is a good feeling after being out in the frost. You watch the way the light flickers. It makes the shadows of the pillars move back and forth, as if the building itself is breathing. You hear the sound of a broom sweeping the rushes. An old woman is moving slowly, making sure the floor is neat. She moves the old, dirty rushes away and lays down fresh ones from a bundle in the corner. You help her move a heavy bench into place alongside the table. The bench is made of the same dark oak as the tabletops. It is heavy and solid. When you sit on it for a second to test it, the wood feels hard and unyielding. There are no soft cushions here, just the strength of the timber. One of the kitchen boys brings in a small bowl of salt and places it in the very center of the high table. This is a micro-history detail that is very important. Salt is very expensive and hard to get. Placing it on the table is a sign that the feast is going to be a grand one. The salt sits in a small silver dish that sparkles in the firelight. It looks like a little pile of snow. Around the salt, you help lay out the trenchers. A trencher is a very simple thing. It is a thick, fat piece of stale bread that is used like a plate. Instead of using a dish made of wood or metal, you put your meat right onto the bread. The bread soaks up all the juices and fats from the food. At the end of the meal, you can eat the bread or give it to the poor people waiting at the gates. It is a simple and clever way to make sure nothing is wasted. The hall is almost ready now. The long tables are straight and true. The candles are all in their places, waiting for the spark of a torch to bring them to life. The rushes on the floor are thick and smell of the meadow. You walk back toward the fire and stand there for a minute, soaking in the last bit of heat before you have to leave. The silence of the room is deep and peaceful. It is the silence of a house that is waiting for a big celebration. You can almost feel the excitement in the air, hidden in the corners and under the tables. You look at the high windows. They are small and narrow, letting in only a tiny bit of the silver moonlight from outside. The world out there is still frozen and dark, but in here, everything is golden and warm. You feel a sense of pride. You have helped prepare the place where the whole community will find joy during the coldest part of the year. Your hands are a little dusty from the wood and the rushes, but you do not mind. You wipe them on your woolen tunic and take one last look at the beautiful, empty hall. It is a grand sight, a place of safety and warmth built of stone and wood. You turn back toward the heavy door, ready to continue your night's work, knowing that the heart of the village is ready to beat loud and strong when the sun comes up. You step back out of the heavy door and leave the golden light of the great hall behind. The transition is sharp. The cold air hits you like a physical weight, pressing against your chest and making you gasp for a moment. It is much darker out here now that the sun has completely vanished. You stand still for a minute, letting your eyes adjust to the deep blue of the night. Slowly, the shapes of the castle courtyard begin to appear. You see the dark outlines of the stables and the high, square shape of the gatehouse. Everything is covered in a thin, pale crust of frost that catches the light of the stars. You walk toward the stone stairs that lead up to the top of the outer walls. These stairs are narrow and steep. They are built into the side of the stone, winding upwards in a tight circle. People call these turnpike stairs. They are made this way so that, if an enemy tried to run up them, they would find it very hard to swing a sword. But tonight, there are no enemies. There is only the biting cold and the silence. You place your hand on the central stone pillar to steady yourself as you climb. The stone is rough and uneven. It feels like frozen sand under your palm. You can feel the small pits and bumps where a stone cutter used a chisel many years ago to shape each step. As you reach the top, you step out onto the wall walk. This is a narrow path made of flat stones that runs along the very top of the castle walls. On one side, there is a high stone barrier with gaps for looking out. On the other side, there is a long drop down into the dark courtyard. The wind is much stronger up here. It high and lonely, whistling through the gaps in the stone. It pulls at your woolen mantle, trying to unwrap it from your shoulders. You tighten the pin and lean your back against a cold pillar for a moment. You are high above the world now. From up here, you can see the whole village and the woods beyond. You look down at the houses. They look like tiny, dark islands in a sea of white frost. A simple fact of history is that the night watch was not just about looking for armies or thieves. The biggest danger to a medieval town was fire. Almost every house is made of wood, and has a roof made of dry straw. Everyone has a fire burning inside to keep warm. If a single spark flew out of a chimney and landed on a roof, the whole village could burn down while people slept. That is why you are here. Your eyes move slowly from one roof to another, looking for any glow that is too bright or any smoke that looks too thick. You are the guardian of their safety. To help you see, you walk toward a cresset. This is a micro-history detail that you see every few yards along the wall. A cresset is a simple iron basket on a tall pole. Inside the basket, there are thick pieces of wood soaked in animal fat or oil. You take a small torch from a protected nook in the wall and light the wood. The fire catches quickly. The flames are bright orange and yellow, dancing wildly in the wind. The heat is small, but if you hold your hands near the iron bars, you can feel a little bit of comfort. The light from the cresset makes the grey stones of the wall look warm, almost like they are glowing from the inside. You begin your walk along the wall. The stones under your boots are slippery with a thin layer of ice. You have to walk carefully, placing each foot down flat. The sound of your footsteps is different up here. It is a hard, hollow thud that seems to travel a long way in the still air. You stop at a corner where the wall turns. This is a turret, a small round room built into the wall. It offers a little bit of shelter from the wind. You step inside for a moment. The air in the turret is still and smells of old dust and damp stone. Through a thin slit in the wall, you can see the moon. The moon is higher now, and it is so bright that you can see the dark shapes of the mountains far away on the horizon. They look like giant sleeping giants covered in a white blanket. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just look at the world. You do not move. You do not speak. You just breathe in the freezing air and watch the stars. The sky feels like a giant black bowl turned upside down over the earth. You feel very connected to the ground beneath you and the sky above you. It is a peaceful feeling. Even though it is winter and the world looks dead, you know that life is just hiding, waiting for the spring. You step back out onto the path and continue your circle. You look over the outer edge of the wall, down into the moat. The water in the moat is not moving. It has frozen over into a thick sheet of black ice. You can see the reflection of the stars in the ice, perfectly still. It looks like there is a second sky beneath your feet. You imagine the fish swimming slowly in the dark, cold water under the ice, waiting for the sun to warm the world again. Everything is in a deep sleep. You reach the part of the wall that looks over the village church. The church is the only building made of stone, just like the castle. Its windows are dark, but you know that inside, the monks are preparing for the midnight prayers. Soon, you will hear the sound of their voices drifting up to you. But for now, the only sound is the wind and the crackle of the wood in the cressets. You check the leather pouch at your belt to make sure your flint and steel are safe. If the wind blows out your light, you must be able to start it again. Your fingers are a bit stiff from the cold, so you rub them together inside your sleeves. The stones of the wall are very thick. In some places, they are as wide as a small room. You can see the moss that grows in the cracks between the stones. Even in the middle of winter, the moss is a deep, dark green. It feels soft and spongy, like a tiny forest. You wonder how something so small can stay alive in such a cold place. It reminds you that life is tough. Like the people in the village, the moss finds a way to survive the long dark. You find a spot where the wall is a bit higher, protecting you from the north wind. You lean your staff against the stone and wrap your arms around yourself. You think about the people sleeping below. You think about the children tucked into straw beds and the old people resting by the dying embers of their fires. They do not know you are up here, watching over them. They do not see the way the moonlight hits the frost on the fields. This is your secret world. It is a lonely job, but it is a good one. There is a kind of honor in being the one who stays awake so that others can rest without fear. As you walk, you notice a small owl sitting on the edge of the battlements. It is a white owl, almost the same color as the frost. It stays perfectly still as you pass by. Its big, yellow eyes watch you with a calm look. It is a fellow watcher of the night. You nod to it quietly, and it stays where it is, looking out over the dark woods. You feel a little less lonely knowing that the owl is there. The night is moving slowly. The stars have shifted a little bit across the sky. You know it is almost time to check the gatehouse and make sure the heavy iron bars are all in place. You take one last look at the horizon. The world is a beautiful, silver place tonight. The cold is deep, but the heart of the village is warm. You turn back toward the stairs, your boots making that steady, rhythmic sound on the stone. Step by step, you move through the shadows, a silent ghost on the high walls, keeping the midwinter peace for everyone below. You leave the cold, lonely wind of the high walls and walk back down the narrow stone stairs. Your legs feel a bit heavy now, but the air is changing. As you get closer to the ground, the smell of the night air changes again. It is no longer just the smell of frost and old stone. There is something new on the breeze. It is a rich, heavy smell that makes your stomach rumble just a little bit. It is the smell of wood smoke mixed with roasting meat and sweet, spicy herbs. You follow your nose across the dark courtyard, moving toward a low building with light leaking out from under the door. This is the castle kitchen. In the middle of the night, most of the castle is silent, but the kitchen never really sleeps. Not during Christmas. There is too much work to do. You push open the heavy wooden door, and a cloud of thick, white steam rolls out to meet you. It feels like a warm, wet hug. The room is huge, with a ceiling so high it is lost in the darkness above. The walls are black with soot from the many fires that have burned here for 100 years. Even though the sun is not up, the kitchen is bright. There are 2 giant fireplaces, each one big enough for a horse to stand inside. They are filled with roaring logs that crackle and pop, throwing bright orange light across the room. You step inside and close the door softly. The floor here is made of big, flat stones. They are greasy and slippery from the fat of many meals, so you walk with small, careful steps. You see the cooks moving through the steam like ghosts. They do not talk much. They have been working since the sun went down, and they will work until the sun comes up again. This is their night shift. They are the ones who make sure the great feast is ready for the morning. You watch an old man with a dirty white apron tied around his waist. He's stirring a giant metal pot that is so big he has to use a wooden paddle the size of an oar. This giant pot is called a cauldron. A simple fact about life in this time is that most food was cooked in one big pot over the fire. It was the easiest way to feed a lot of people at once. Inside the cauldron, a thick soup called pottage is bubbling. It is made of oats, beans, and whatever vegetables were left over from the autumn harvest. In the winter, this simple soup is what keeps the worker strong. You watch the steam rise from the pot in long, curling ribbons. It smells of onions and earthy herbs. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just watch the bubbles rise and pop. The sound is a soft, rhythmic glug, glug that is very relaxing. It is the heartbeat of the kitchen. You move closer to the largest fireplace. This is where the real magic is happening. There are 3 long metal rods stretched across the fire. These are called spits. On each spit, there is a giant piece of meat. There is a whole pig, a large side of beef, and several fat geese. The meat is turning slowly, very slowly, so that every side gets the heat from the fire. As the meat cooks, the fat melts and drips down into a large metal pan on the floor. This pan is called a dripping pan. You hear the sizzle and hiss as the hot fat hits the metal. The smell is incredible. It is the smell of 100 Christmas dinners all at once. One of the kitchen boys is sitting on a small stool next to the fire. His job is to turn the spit. It is a boring, hot job. He has to keep the meat moving so it does not burn on one side. He looks tired, his face red from the heat of the flames. To keep the meat moist, he uses a long wooden spoon to scoop up the melted fat from the dripping pan and pour it back over the roasting pig. This is called basting. The fat makes the skin of the pig turn a deep, golden brown and become very crispy. You watch the golden liquid run down the side of the meat, sparkling in the firelight like melted gold. This brings us to a micro-history detail about the kitchen. Look closely at the boy's hand. He is holding a parsnip. This is a small metal pot with 3 little feet and a long handle. He uses it to warm up special sauces right next to the edge of the fire. Inside the parsnip, there is a thick, dark sauce made of wine, honey, and ground bread. It smells very strong. This is because the cooks have added something very special, spices. In these times, spices like cinnamon, ginger, and cloves are very hard to find. They come from very far away, across the big sea. They are so expensive that they are kept in a locked wooden box. Using spices is a way for the Lord to show how rich and powerful He is. To you, the smell is wonderful. It smells like warmth and luxury. It is a smell that only happens at Christmas. You walk over to a long wooden table where a woman is working with a large pile of dough. Her hands are white with flour, and she moves with a steady, rocking motion. She's making meat pies. She takes a piece of dough and presses it into a round shape, then fills it with chopped meat, dried raisins, and more of those precious spices. She calls these coffins. In this time, the word coffin just means a box or a case made of pastry. The pastry is very thick and hard. It acts like a little oven for the meat inside, keeping all the juices trapped so the meat stays soft. When you see a pile of these pies waiting to go into the oven, they look like little brown hills. The heat in the kitchen is making you feel very sleepy. It is a different kind of tired than the one you felt out in the cold. Out there, your body was tight and stiff. In here, the warmth makes your muscles feel soft and heavy. You find a quiet corner away from the busy cooks and lean against a stack of dry firewood. You watch the way the shadows of the copper pans on the wall dance back and forth. The pans have been polished until they shine like mirrors. They catch the orange light of the fire and throw it back into the room. The cooks are starting to move faster now. They are bringing in large wooden trays filled with bread. The bread has been baking in a separate stone oven outside, and it is still warm. You can smell the yeast and the toasted crust. A simple historical fact is that in a castle like this, bread was the most important thing on the table. Everyone, from the highest lord to the lowest servant, ate bread every single day. For the Christmas feast, the bread is made of fine white flour, which is much softer and sweeter than the dark, grainy bread the villagers eat. You see a young girl carrying a bundle of green plants. She's not cooking them. She's using them to decorate the dishes. She takes sprigs of bright green holly and tucks them around the edges of the meat pies. The red berries look like tiny drops of blood against the green leaves. She also has branches of rosemary, which smells like the pine forest. She rubs the rosemary between her fingers to release the scent. The smell of the herbs mixes with the smell of the roasting meat and the sweet spices, creating the true scent of a medieval Christmas. It is a smell that feels like a celebration. You stay in the kitchen for a while longer, enjoying the warmth. You watch the fire die down a little, and you see the head cook throw on more logs. The sparks fly up the wide chimney, joining the stars in the night sky. The work here will go on for many more hours. The pots will keep bubbling, the meat will keep turning, and the pies will keep baking. The kitchen is a place of hard work, but it is also a place of life. It is where the cold of winter is defeated by the heat of the fire and the skill of the cooks. You stand up and stretch your arms. Your mantle feels warm against your skin. You know you must head back out into the night to continue your watch, but you feel better now. You have seen the feast being born. You have smelled the spices of the east and felt the heat of the great fire. You take one last look at the golden room, the busy cooks, and the roasting meat. You breathe in the rich air one last time, tucking the memory of the warmth into your mind to keep you going through the next few hours of the long, dark night. You turn back to the door, ready to face the frost again. The kitchen door shuts behind you with a soft thud. For a moment, you stand in the dark courtyard, feeling the heat from the fires slowly leave your skin. The night is even quieter now. The only sound is the distant, rhythmic ring of a hammer on stone from somewhere deep in the castle. You turn your back on the glowing windows of the great hall and walk toward the low, long buildings near the outer wall. These are the barns. In the Middle Ages, these buildings were just as important as the castle itself. Without the animals, the people would not have food, or wool for clothes, or the strength to plough the fields in the spring. You reach the door of the byre. A byre is a simple word for a cow house. The door is made of rough planks of wood, held together with thick strips of iron. There is no lock, just a heavy wooden bar that you lift with both hands. It is smooth from years of being touched by many different people. As you pull the door open, a wave of very different air hits you. It is not the dry, spicy heat of the kitchen. This air is thick, damp, and very warm. It smells of dried grass, old wood, and the deep, earthy scent of large animals. It is a smell that is heavy and sweet, the smell of life staying warm against the cold. You step inside and pull the door shut behind you. It is very dark here, but your eyes soon find the shapes of the cows. They are lined up into rows, their large bodies filling the space. You can hear them before you see them. The barn is full of the sound of slow, heavy breathing. It sounds like the ocean, a soft hiss and sigh that happens over and over again. Every now and then, you hear the clink of a metal chain or the thump of a heavy tail hitting a wooden post. The cows are resting, their large eyes reflecting the tiny bit of starlight that comes through the small holes in the roof. You walk to the corner of the barn where the hay is kept. The hay was cut in the middle of the summer, when the sun was high and the fields were green. Now it is dry and golden. You pick up a large bundle of it in your arms. It is surprisingly light, but it is very scratchy. You can feel the sharp ends of the dried grass poking through your woolen sleeves. You carry the bundle over to the feeding trough. A simple historical fact about these barns is that they were often built with thick walls made of wattle and daub. This is a clever way of building where you weave sticks together like a basket and then cover them with a mix of mud, straw, and horsehair. These walls are very good at keeping the wind out and the warmth of the animals in, because the cows are so big and produce so much body heat. The barn stays much warmer than the world outside. As you drop the hay into the wooden rack, which people call a cratch, the cows begin to move. They know it is time for a special midwinter treat. You feel a large, wet nose press against your hand. The cow's skin is rough, like a piece of heavy suede, but her breath is hot and smells like sweet grass. You reach out and pat her neck. Her hair is thick and a bit oily to the touch. You can feel the solid weight of her muscles and the slow, steady beat of her heart. She is a giant, gentle creature, and she is glad you are here. You move down the line, filling each cratch with a big helping of the best hay. This is a micro-history detail that matters on this special night. Usually, the animals are fed just enough to keep them alive through the winter. Hay is precious and must last until the grass grows again in the spring. But on Christmas night, the workers give the animals an extra honor portion. They give them the thickest, sweetest hay from the middle of the stack. It is a way of saying thank you to the creatures that help the village survive. You watch as the cows begin to eat. The sound of their chewing is a steady, rhythmic crunch, crunch, crunch. It is a very peaceful sound. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to sit down on a pile of clean straw. You lean your back against the wooden wall of the barn. You close your eyes for a minute. The barn is full of life, even though it is the middle of the night. You listen to the cows chewing and the soft rustle of the straw as they shift their weight. You hear a small mouse scurrying somewhere in the rafters above. High up in the roof, a barn owl lets out a soft, low woo. You feel very safe here. The thick walls and the heat of the animals protect you from the freezing wind that is howling outside. In this moment, you feel like you are in a different world, a world that is slow and calm. After a while, you stand up and move to the smaller pen at the end of the building. This is where the sheep are kept. They are huddled together in a big, fluffy white cloud. When you walk near them, they let out soft, low bleats. Their wool is very thick and feels like a warm, greasy blanket. You reach down and touch the back of one sheep. Your fingers sink deep into the wool. It is full of lanolin, which is a natural oil that keeps the sheep dry in the rain. It makes your hands feel soft and a bit sticky. You give them their extra hay too, watching as they jostle each other gently to get to the best bits. There is an old story that people tell in the village. They say that at the exact middle of the night on Christmas, all the animals in the barn stand up and kneel down on their front legs. They say the animals are the only ones who truly know the secret of the night, and that they talk to each other in human voices for just 1 minute. You look at the big, calm eyes of the lead cow. She looks back at you with a look that seems very wise. You wonder if the story is true. Even if they do not speak with words, you can feel that they are happy and content. You check the water troughs. The water is cold, but because the barn is so warm, it is not frozen into ice like the village well. You use a heavy wooden bucket to bring in more water from the stone tank outside. The water sloshes in the bucket, and a few drops land on your boots. You work slowly and carefully, making sure every animal has what it needs. Your muscles are starting to ache a little bit, but it is a good kind of ache. It is the feeling of doing a job that matters. The light from your small candle is starting to flicker. The beeswax is melting away, and the flame is getting low. You decide it is time to leave the animals to their rest. You take one last look around the barn. The cows are all eating happily, their tails swishing slowly. The sheep are settling back down into their warm huddle. The smell of the hay and the animals is deep and comforting. You feel a sense of connection to these creatures. You are all part of the same cycle of life, waiting together for the sun to return. You walk back to the heavy door and lift the wooden bar. As you step back out into the cold, the sudden change in temperature makes you shiver. The frost feels even sharper now, and the stars look even colder. But you carry the warmth of the barn with you in your clothes and on your skin. You pull your mantle tight and slide the bar back into place, locking the animals safely inside their warm wooden world. You turn back toward the path, the sound of the cows breathing still echoing in your ears as you move back into the silent, frozen night. You leave the warmth of the barn and walk down the narrow dirt path that leads into the heart of the village. The ground is still very hard and frozen, but here the path is smoother because of the many feet that walk it every day. The houses of the village are dark and silent. Most people are fast asleep, huddled under heavy woolen blankets or skins. But as you turn a corner near the small stone church, you see a thin yellow light spilling out from the bottom of a door. You also smell something wonderful. It is the scent of fresh yeast and toasted grain. This is the village bakery. In the Middle Ages, The baker was a very important man. Most people did not have an oven in their own small houses. A large stone oven was expensive to build and used a lot of wood to stay hot. So, the village baker was the one who cooked the bread for everyone. Usually, his shop is a busy, loud place during the day, but tonight it is quiet. He's working the night shift. You push the door open and step inside. The air is warm and very dry. It feels like a soft summer day compared to the biting frost outside. The baker is a tall man with strong arms and a face that is always dusted with white flour. He nods to you as you enter, but he does not stop his work. He is standing at a long wooden table, his hands moving in a steady rhythm. You go over to help him. On the table is a giant mound of dough. It is pale and soft, like a big, heavy pillow. You reach out and press your hands into it. It feels slightly sticky at first, but as you push and pull it, the dough becomes smooth and bouncy. This is called kneading. It is hard work. You have to use the weight of your shoulders to push the dough down and then fold it back over itself. As you work, the baker tells you about the special bread you are making tonight. Usually, he bakes dark, heavy bread made of rye and barley for the village workers. But tonight is different. This is for the Christmas season. You are making bread for the poor people of the parish. A simple fact of history that there were very strict laws about bread back then. They called these laws the assize of bread. These laws told the baker exactly how much a loaf should weigh and how much it should cost. If a baker made a loaf too small, he could be in big trouble. But for the Christmas bread, the baker adds a little bit of honey and some dried fruit to make it a treat for those who have very little. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to watch the baker work. He is moving a large wooden tool called a peel. This is a micro-history detail that is very important in a bakery. A peel is a long wooden pole with a flat, round board at the end, shaped like a large spade. He uses it to slide the loaves of bread deep into the stone oven. The oven is a large, rounded dome made of thick bricks. Earlier in the night, the baker built a huge fire inside the dome to get the bricks very hot. Then, he swept the ashes out and left the heat trapped inside the stone. You watch as he dusts the peel with a little bit of flour so the dough does not stick. He places a round loaf on the flat wood and slides it into the dark, hot mouth of the oven. With a quick flick of his wrist, the loaf slides off and lands perfectly on the hot stone floor of the oven. He does this again and again until the oven is full of small, round hills of dough. You can hear the soft thud as each loaf hits the stone. The smell in the room starts to change. The smell of raw dough disappears, and the rich, nutty smell of baking bread fills every corner. You help him prepare the next batch. You use a small wooden bowl to measure out the flour. The flour is soft and feels like silk between your fingers. Every time you move a bag of grain, a tiny cloud of white dust rises into the air. In the light of the single candle, the dust looks like tiny bits of falling snow. Your eyelashes and your hair are turning white from the flour. You and the baker look like two ghosts working in the warm dark. You do not talk much. The only sounds are the crackle of a small fire in the hearth and the thump of the dough being hit against the wooden table. The baker shows you how to mark the loaves. Before they go into the oven, you use a small, sharp knife to cut across into the top of each one. This helps the bread rise evenly and prevents the crust from cracking. It also looks very pretty. You work carefully, making sure each cut is clean and deep. You feel a sense of peace doing this simple task. You are making something that will feed people who are hungry. You are helping to share the joy of the season through a simple loaf of bread. After a while, the first batch is ready. The baker uses the long wooden peel to reach deep into the oven. When he pulls it out, the loaves are no longer pale and soft. They are a beautiful golden brown color. They are hard and crusty on the outside, but you know they are soft and steaming on the inside. He taps the bottom of one loaf with his finger. It makes a hollow, drum-like sound. This means it is cooked perfectly. He slides the hot bread onto a wooden rack to cool. You can see the heat shimmering off the crusts. The air around the rack smells like a warm field of wheat. You think about the people who will receive this bread tomorrow morning. They will come to the church doors, shivering in the cold, and they will be given a loaf that is still a little bit warm from the oven. It will be the best thing they have eaten in a long time. The baker is not a rich man, and he has worked all through the night while others slept, but he does this every year. It is his way of being part of the Christmas spirit. You feel proud to be his helper for these few hours. The heat of the oven is very strong, and you find yourself leaning against the cool stone wall of the bakery for a moment to rest. You watch the flickering orange light from the small fire reflect in the baker's eyes. He looks tired, but he has a small smile on his face. He is happy with his work. Outside, the world is still frozen and silent, but in here, there is life and warmth and the promise of a good meal. You spend the next few hours helping him finish the work. You bag up the cooled loaves into large cloth sacks. The fabric of the sacks is rough and smells of the earth. As you lift them, you can feel the weight of the bread. It is a solid, heavy weight that feels good in your arms. Your hands are covered in a thin layer of flour and dried dough, but you do not mind. You feel like you have done something real and important. As the night begins to move toward the very early morning, the baker gives you a small piece of bread that broke off one of the loaves. It is still warm. You bite into it, and the crust crunches loudly in the quiet room. The inside is soft and tastes of salt and grain, and just a hint of honey. It is the best bread you have ever tasted. It warms your stomach and gives you the energy to keep going. You thank the baker and pick up your staff and your candle. You step back out into the night air. The cold feels even sharper now because your skin is so warm from the bakery. You take a deep breath, and the cold air feels like fresh water in your lungs. The smell of the bread follows you for a little way down the street, a sweet and golden memory of the work you did in the dark. You look up at the stars, which are still shining brightly, and continue your walk through the sleeping village. Your watch is not over yet, but your heart feels a little lighter and your belly feels a little warmer. The sweet smell of the bakery fades as you walk back toward the edge of the woods. The night is at its deepest point now. The stars seem to be pulsing with a cold, white light. As you move away from the village houses, you hear a new sound. It is not the quiet breathing of the cows or the crackle of the baker's oven. It is a rhythmic, heavy sound. It sounds like a slow drum beat, but it is deeper. It is the sound of many men shouting in a low, steady way, and the crunch, crunch, crunch of heavy feet in deep snow. You stop and wait by a large, gnarled oak tree. Its bark is rough and cold under your hand. Out of the darkness of the forest, a group of men appears. They are carrying long torches made of pine wood. The orange flames lick at the dark sky, sending up long trails of black smoke. In the middle of the group, there is something very big and very heavy. It is a giant tree trunk, stripped of its branches. This is the Yule log. A simple historical fact about this log is that it had to be a very specific kind of wood. Usually, it was a piece of oak or ash. It was not just a piece of firewood. It was the heart of the whole Christmas season. People believed that this log held the light of the sun inside its wood. By bringing it into the house and lighting it, they were helping the sun find its way back to the world after the long winter. The log was so big that it could not be carried. It had to be dragged. You watch the men as they work. They have tied thick ropes made of twisted hemp around one end of the log. The ropes are rough and grey. looking like giant snakes in the torchlight. 5 men are on each side, leaning forward with all their weight. Their boots sink deep into the snow, and you can see the muscles in their backs straining against their tunics. Their breath comes out in thick, white clouds that glow in the light of the torches. They are moving very slowly, only a few inches with every pull. You step forward to help. You grab a part of the rope that is free. The hemp is freezing cold and feels like gravel against your palms. You wrap it once around your hand and lean in. You feel the weight of the giant tree. It feels like trying to move a mountain. It is a solid, stubborn weight that does not want to leave the forest. But then, the lead man calls out a low chant, and everyone pulls at once. The log gives a loud, wet groan as it slides across the frozen ground. You feel a small jolt of energy go through your arms. You are part of the team now. This brings us to a micro-history detail about how they moved such heavy things. Underneath the log, the men have placed rollers. These are smaller, round branches that have been peeled, so they are very smooth. As the log moves forward, it rolls over these branches, making the work a little bit easier. When a roller pops out from the back of the log, a young boy runs to pick it up. He's wearing a small woolen cap pulled low over his ears. He carries the roller to the front and lays it down in the snow again. This constant cycle of moving the wood keeps the log gliding toward the village. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just watch the snow fall on the log. The forest is so quiet that you can hear the tiny tink of snowflakes hitting the rough bark. The bark is dark and wet, and in some places it is covered in a soft, grey moss. You look at the rings on the end of the log where it was cut. There are so many of them, hundreds of circles showing how long the tree lived. It spent many years in the woods, growing tall and strong, and now it is going to provide warmth for everyone. The group moves out of the woods and onto the main path. The ground here is flatter, and the log moves a bit faster. The men start to hum a low tune. It is not a fast or happy song. It is a slow, steady song that matches the rhythm of their steps. It feels like a very old song, something that people have been singing in these woods for 1,000 years. The sound of the voices and the hiss of the log sliding through the snow create a peaceful, trance-like feeling. As you get closer to the castle, the men stop for a moment to rest. One man brings out a small wooden jug. This is another part of the tradition. Before the log can enter the hall, it must be fed. The man pours a little bit of dark ale over the wood. You watch the brown liquid disappear into the cracks of the bark. He also sprinkles a little bit of grain on it. This is a way of asking for a good harvest in the coming year. It is a simple gesture, but everyone watches in silence. They treat the log with a lot of respect, as if it is a guest coming to visit. You look at your hands. They are red from the cold and the rough rope, but they feel strong. The hard work has made your blood move faster, and you don't feel the biting wind as much as you did before. You look at the faces of the other men. They are covered in sweat, even though the air is freezing. They look tired, but they have a look of pride in their eyes. Bringing in the Yule log is a very important job. It is a sign that the festivities can truly begin. The final stretch of the journey is up the small hill toward the castle gate. This is the hardest part. You dig your heels into the dirt and pull with everything you have. Your heart is thumping against your ribs like a small bird. You can hear the heavy thud of the log. It bumps over a stone. Slowly, surely, the giant piece of wood passes under the stone arch of the gatehouse. The sound of the dragging changes as it moves from the soft snow to the hard stones of the courtyard. It becomes a loud, scraping shriek that echoes off the high walls. You reach the doors of the great hall. The doors are thrown open, and the light from the inside spills out onto the snow. It looks like a bright, golden rectangle on the ground. The men give one last, giant pull, and the Yule log slides over the threshold and into the hall. It comes to a stop right in front of the giant hearth. The work is done. You let go of the rope, and your fingers feel tingly and strange as the blood flows back into them. A final historical fact you should know is that the Yule log was never supposed to burn out. Once it was lit, it had to stay burning for all 12 days of Christmas. If the fire went out, people thought it was a sign of bad luck for the next year. At the very end of the season, they would save a small, charred piece of the wood. They would keep this piece safely under a bed or in a box. Next year, they would use that old piece to light the new log. It was a way of connecting one year to the next, a never-ending chain of light and warmth. You stand there for a minute, watching the men untie the ropes. The log looks massive in the middle of the room, like a sleeping animal. It is covered in bits of snow and dead leaves, but soon it will be the brightest thing in the castle. You feel a deep sense of satisfaction. You helped bring the warmth inside. You take a slow, deep breath and feel the heat of the hall beginning to dry your damp clothes. The long night continues, but the heart of the winter fire is now where it belongs. You turn back toward the door, ready to step out once more, leaving the giant log to wait for the morning spark. You leave the warm, busy noise of the great hall and step back into the silver world of the night. The heavy lifting of the Yule log has left your arms feeling loose and your skin glowing with heat, but the winter air quickly finds you again. You walk away from the castle and down the sloping path toward the village church. It is the only other building made of stone in this whole area. In the moonlight, the grey stones look almost blue. The church is small and squat, with thick walls that have stood against the wind for hundreds of years. There are no lights in the windows, but you can see a soft, flickering glow coming from the cracks around the door. A simple historical fact you might like to know that for the people living here, the church was the center of everything. Most of their houses were made of mud and straw, so this stone building felt like a fortress. It was the strongest and most beautiful place they knew. On this night, the night of midwinter, they believed the church was a place of special magic and safety. They thought that while the rest of the world was dark and full of shadows, the inside of the church was a little piece of heaven on earth. You reach the porch of the church. This is a small stone shelter built over the main entrance. You stop here for a moment to scrape the frozen mud and snow from your boots. You use a small iron scrap fastened to the stone. The sound of the metal against your boot is sharp in the quiet. Above you, the ceiling of the porch is carved with simple shapes of leaves and flowers. You reach out and touch the heavy oak door. It is even thicker than the doors of the castle. It is covered in iron bands that look like the branches of a tree. You find the iron ring that serves as a handle. It is freezing cold, and you can feel the tiny bumps of rust on the metal. You turn it slowly, and the door swings open on its heavy hinges with a low, mournful creak. As you step inside, the first thing you notice is the smell. It is very different from the smells of the castle. There is no roasting meat here, and no smell of animals. Instead, the air is thin and cold, but it is filled with the scent of beeswax and frankincense. Frankincense is a special sap from a tree that grows in very hot, faraway lands. When it is burned on hot coals, it makes a thick, sweet smoke that smells like pine trees and old honey. You take a deep breath, and the smoke feels heavy in your chest. It is a smell that makes you want to move slowly and speak in a whisper. The church is very dark. There are no big fires here to light the way. The only light comes from a few tall candles standing on the altar at the far end of the room. Their flames are small and steady, like tiny golden seeds in the dark. Because the air inside the church is so still, the flames do not flicker. They cast long, thin shadows of the stone pillars across the floor. You walk forward, your boots making a soft tap on the floor. The floor is made of big, flat stones that are very cold. Even through the thick moss in your boots, you can feel the chill of the earth coming up through the rock. You stop near the entrance and find a small stone bowl built into the wall. This is a micro-history detail called our holy water stoop. It is a simple basin carved out of a single block of limestone. Inside, there is a little bit of water. On this cold night, the water has a very thin skin of ice on top, like a sheet of clear glass. You reach out a finger and touch it. The ice breaks with a tiny snap, and the water beneath is bitingly cold. This stoop has been here as long as the church has, used by every person who has ever walked through these doors. You feel a connection to all those people, all the watchers and workers who came here before you. You move further into the room and see the rood screen. This is a beautiful wooden fence that stands between the main part of the church and the altar. It is made of dark oak and is carved with many tiny details. You can see little wooden birds, vines, and stars. It is painted in bright colors red, blue, and gold, but in the dim candlelight, the colors look deep and mysterious. You run your hand over the smooth wood. It feels different from the rough wood of the barn or the kitchen. It has been polished with oil until it feels like silk. This screen is like a boundary. On one side is the world of the people, and on the other side is the world of the light. You find a place to sit on a low stone bench against the wall. You wrap your woolen mantle tight around your knees and lean your head back against the stone. It is very quiet. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just listen to the building. You hear the tiny ticking sound of the candles as the wax melts. You hear the wind outside, a low and lonely sound as it brushes against the high stone windows. The silence here is not empty. It feels full, like the building is holding its breath. You feel very safe inside these thick walls. The darkness here does not feel scary. It feels like a soft, velvet blanket. Then, from somewhere behind the rood screen, you hear a sound. It is a low, humming sound, like the sound of a giant bee. Slowly, the sound grows louder and turns into voices. These are the monks. They are starting their night prayers. They do not sing like the people in the village do. They do not have drums or harps. They use only their voices. This kind of singing is called plainchant. It is a very simple and very old way of making music. All the men sing the same notes at the same time. The sound is smooth and round, like a river of gold flowing through the dark church. The voices rise and fall in a steady rhythm. You do not understand the words they are saying, because they are speaking in an old language, but you can feel the meaning in the sound. The voices echo off the high stone ceiling and the hard walls. It feels like the sound is coming from the stones themselves. You close your eyes and let the music wash over you. It makes your heart beat more slowly. It makes the tiredness in your legs feel like it is floating away. In this moment, the cold of the winter night feels very far away. You feel like you are in a place where time has stopped. You watch the shadows move on the walls as the monks move behind the screen. Their long woolen robes make a soft swish on the stone floor. They carry small iron lamps that throw circles of light onto the ceiling. One monk comes out to trim the candles on the altar. He uses a small pair of metal scissors. You see the tiny spark as he cuts the wick, and the light becomes a little bit brighter. His face is calm and peaceful, his skin looking like old parchment in the glow. He does not see you sitting in the shadows, and you do not speak. You are just another part of the night. The singing continues for a long time. It is a sound that has no beginning and no end. It feels like it has always been here and always will be. You think about the people sleeping in their small houses nearby. They might hear a faint echo of this singing in their dreams, and it will make them feel safe. You are the only one awake to hear it clearly. You feel lucky to be the watchman tonight. You are seeing the secret, quiet side of Christmas that most people never see. As the monks finish their song, the church becomes perfectly still again. The last note of the chant hangs in the air for a second, echoing in the corners of the roof, before it slowly fades away. The monks move back into the shadows of the vestry, and the light from their lamps disappears. You are alone in the dark again, with only the 2 candles on the altar to keep you company. The smell of the frankincense is still strong, a sweet and smoky memory of the music. You stand up slowly, your body feels rested, and your mind feels clear. You walk back toward the heavy oak door, being careful not to make too much noise. You take one last look at the altar and the flickering golden seeds of light. The church is a place of peace, a stone heart in the middle of the frozen village. You push the door open, and the cold winter air rushes in to meet you. It feels sharp and fresh after the heavy smoke of the church. You step back out into the porch and pull the door shut behind you. The creak of the hinges is the only sound in the night. You pick up your staff and look up at the stars. The watch continues, and you move back into the world of frost and shadow, carrying the warmth of the song deep inside you. The cold air outside the church feels like a splash of water on your face. You leave the silent stone porch and start the walk back up the hill toward the castle. The path is narrow, and the snow is piled high on either side. It looks like white walls guiding you home. Your breath is still a steady cloud in front of you. As you reach the main castle gates, you see that you are not the only one moving in the dark. A small line of people has gathered in the outer courtyard. They are the other workers of the estate, the woodcutters, the stable hands, and the men who look after the fields. They are standing quietly, shifting their weight from one foot to the other to keep the blood moving in their toes. Tonight is the night of the Lord's gift. In these times, it is a very important part of the winter season. A simple historical fact is that Christmas was a time when the person in charge, the Lord of the Manor, showed his kindness to the people who worked for him all year. It was a tradition that kept the village together. Without the Lord's protection, the villagers would be in danger, and without the villagers' hard work, the Lord would have no food or wealth. This night is a way of saying thank you to everyone who has helped the castle survive. You join the end of the line, even though it is the middle of the night. No one is complaining about the wait. There is a feeling of excitement in the air. You look ahead and see a large wooden table has been set up just inside the shelter of the gatehouse. Behind the table stands the steward. He is the man who looks after all the Lord's money and grain. He has a big book made of thick parchments and a long feather pen. Next to him, there are several large wooden chests and stacks of folded cloth. When it is finally your turn, you step forward into the light of the torches. The steward looks at you and gives a small, tired nod. He knows you have been walking the walls all night. He reaches into one of the wooden chests and pulls out a heavy bundle of fabric. He hands it to you across the table. This is your main gift, a new winter coat. In this time, a coat is not just a piece of fashion, it is a tool for survival. You hold the fabric in your hands and feel its weight. This is a micro-history detail about the clothing of the time. The coat is made of frieze. Frieze is a very specific kind of heavy woolen cloth. It has been washed and beaten until the fibers are all tangled together. This makes the cloth very thick and almost waterproof. It feels rough and a bit hairy to the touch, like the skin of a wild animal. The color is a deep, dark blue, the color of the sea on a stormy day. You pull the coat on over your tunic. It is big and stiff, but immediately you feel the warmth. It traps the heat of your body inside, creating a layer of warm air that the wind cannot reach. The sleeves are long and wide, so you can pull your hands up inside them if they get too cold. There are no buttons, as those are very expensive and hard to find. Instead, the coat has small loops made of leather and toggles made of smoothed wood. You push the wooden toggles through the loops, and the coat pulls tight against your chest. It smells of sheep and wood smoke, a rich and honest smell. Next, the steward reaches into a smaller leather pouch on the table. He pulls out a single silver penny and places it in your palm. It is a tiny thing, no bigger than your fingernail. It is thin and light, and the edges are a little bit uneven because it was hammered by hand. In our world, a penny is not worth much, but here, a silver penny is a lot of money. It could buy several chickens or a whole sack of fine grain. You run your thumb over the surface of the coin. You can feel the raised shape of a cross on one side and the face of the king on the other. The metal is cold, but it feels like a heavy weight of security in your hand. You tuck it safely into the small pouch at your belt, making sure the string is tied tight. But the Lord's gift is not just about things you can keep. The steward gestures to a large iron pot sitting on a small brazier. A brazier is a metal basket that holds glowing coals to provide heat. Inside the pot, there is a dark, steaming liquid. This is hot spice cider. The steward fills a wooden mug and hands it to you. The mug is made of pieces of oak held together with iron hoops. It is warm against your cold fingers. You take a slow sip. The drink is sweet and very tart, made from the apples gathered in the autumn. It tastes of honey and the same expensive spices you smelled in the kitchen, cinnamon and cloves. The heat of the drink goes straight to your chest, making your whole body feel a little bit more alive. You step away from the table to let the next person move forward. You find a quiet spot near the wall of the gatehouse to finish your drink. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just look at the scene. The torches are flickering in the wind, casting long, jumping shadows on the stone. You see the faces of your friends as they receive their gifts. There is a tall woodcutter who is holding a new pair of leather boots with a look of pure joy. There is an old woman who looks after the poultry, and she is being given a large piece of salted pork wrapped in cloth. Everyone looks a little bit taller, a little bit stronger. The sound of the steward's voice, the clink of the coins, and the soft thud of the cloth bundles being moved create a gentle rhythm. Even though the world is frozen, there is a great sense of plenty here. You think about the Lord, who is likely sleeping in his soft bed in the high tower. He has shared what he has so that his people can be happy. It makes you feel like you belong to something bigger than just yourself. You are not just a man walking in the dark. You are part of a community that looks after its own. You finish the cider and feel the last bit of warmth from the mug fade away. You place the empty wooden cup on a tray and prepare to head back out. The new coat feels wonderful. It is heavy on your shoulders, a solid reminder of the Lord's favor. The silver penny in your pouch makes a tiny clink against your staff as you move. You feel rich and well cared for. You know that when you go home tomorrow, you will have something good to show for your long hours in the cold. You walk back out into the open courtyard. The moon is still high, and the frost is still thick on the ground, but the world does not feel quite as harsh now. You have been given the tools you need to finish the night. You have the warmth of the frieze wall, the security of the silver coin, and the memory of the sweet, hot cider. You take a deep breath of the night air, and for the first time, the cold does not make you shiver. You are the history watchman, and your heart is warm. You turn back toward the shadows of the inner walls, your new coat rustling softly with every step, ready to keep the peace until the sun rises over the silver fields. You leave the gatehouse with your new woolen coat wrapped tightly around you. The silver penny is a small, cold weight in your pouch, and the taste of the spiced cider still lingers on your tongue. Instead of going back up to the high walls just yet, you walk toward a small wooden door set into the side of the castle's main tower. This door leads down into the undercroft. An undercroft is a simple name for a cellar or a storage room built beneath the ground. It is where the castle keeps its extra barrels of ale, its sacks of grain, and the old things that are only used once a year. As you open the door, a wave of cool, damp air meets you. It smells of wet stone and dry earth. You walk down a few stone steps, your boots clicking softly on the rock. The room is long and low, with a ceiling made of heavy stone arches that look like the ribs of a giant whale. The only light comes from a few small oil lamps hanging from the walls. In the center of the room, a group of your friends is gathered. These are the men who work in the stables and the smithy during the day, but tonight they are doing something very different. They are preparing for the mummers' play. A simple historical fact about this tradition is that mummering was a way for people to have fun and tell stories during the 12 days of Christmas. The word comes from an old word that means to wear a mask or to act without speaking. These men go from house to house and even into the great hall to perform a short, funny play. It is a very old tradition that brings a little bit of magic to the dark winter nights. Usually, the play is about a brave knight like St. George who fights a dragon or a greedy enemy. Even though everyone knows the story, they love to see it every year. You see your friend Thomas, who usually looks after the horses. Right now, he's trying to pull on a very strange costume. It is made of hundreds of small strips of colorful cloth sewn onto an old tunic. The strips are red, green, and yellow. When he moves, the cloth swishes and flutters like the leaves of a tree in the wind. He looks much bigger than he really is. You go over to help him. You take a piece of thick string and help him tie the costume tight at his waist. The fabric is rough and smells of the old chest where it was kept all year. Next, you help him with his mask. This is a micro-history detail that is very special. The mask is called a visor. It is not made of plastic or metal. It is made from several layers of linen cloth that have been dipped in a thick glue made from boiled flour and water. When the glue dried, the cloth became as hard as wood. The mask has been painted to look like a fierce man with a big black beard. The paint is made from soot from the chimney mixed with a little bit of oil. You hold the visor up to the light. It looks very strange and a little bit scary. You help Thomas tie the leather straps behind his head. When he puts it on, his eyes disappear into the small holes, and he stops being Thomas the stable hand. He becomes the Turkish knight, the enemy in the play. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to sit on a large wooden barrel and watch your friends. The undercroft is very quiet. You can hear the drip, drip, drip of water falling from a stone in the corner. You watch the way the shadows of the men grow very tall on the walls as they move around the lamps. In this dim light, they do not look like your friends anymore. With their masks and their strange clothes, they look like creatures from an old story. The silence feels heavy and full of secrets. It is a peaceful moment of waiting before the noise and the laughter of the play begin. Another friend, young John, is dressing up as the doctor. In the play, the doctor is a clever man who can bring people back to life with a magic drink. John is wearing a long black robe that is much too big for him. He has a tall hat made of stiff paper and a wooden box filled with small dried berries and stones. When he walks, the box makes a loud rattle sound. He practices his walk, moving with a funny limp that makes the other men smile. You reach out and straighten his hat, which is slipping down over his eyes. The paper is cool and smooth under your fingers. The most important character is the one playing the dragon. Two men have to work together for this. They have a frame made of thin willow branches that have been bent into a long, curved shape. Over the frame, they have stretched a piece of old green canvas. It is painted with big, round scales. You help them lift the frame. It is surprisingly light, but it is very awkward to hold. One man stands at the front to move the head, and the other stands at the back to wag the tail. The head is made of carved wood with a mouth that can snap shut. When they move, the dragon looks like it is crawling across the floor. You laugh quietly as the tail accidentally knocks over a small wooden stool. You see a small bowl of red juice on the table. This is made from crushed winter berries. One of the men is using a small brush made of pig hair to paint red circles on his cheeks. This is his makeup. It makes him look bright and happy, like a character in a picture book. He offers the brush to you, but you shake your head. You are the watchman, and your job is to stay in the shadows and keep everyone safe. You enjoy watching the transformation, though. It is a way of forgetting the cold and the hard work for a little while. The men are almost ready. They pick up their wooden swords. These are not sharp or dangerous. They are just flat pieces of wood that have been smoothed down so they do not give any splinters. They hit the swords together, making a clack, clack sound that echoes in the stone room. They are excited now, their breath coming fast. They know that soon they will be in the great hall, with the big fire and the shouting people. They will be given food and drink as a reward for their play. You walk with them to the door that leads back up to the courtyard. Before they go out, they all put on their masks. Suddenly, the room is full of strange faces, monsters, kings, and heroes. They stand in a line, waiting for the signal. You feel a sense of pride in them. These are hard-working men who give up their sleep to bring a little bit of joy to the village. They are the heart of the Christmas spirit. You open the door for them. The cold air rushes back in, but the men do not seem to notice. They are protected by their thick costumes and their excitement. They move out into the dark courtyard in a long, colorful line. The torches of the castle catch the bright colors of their clothes, making them look like a moving rainbow against the white snow. You watch them walk toward the light of the great hall, their wooden swords held high. You stay by the door for a minute, watching them go. The undercroft is empty and quiet again. The smell of the soot and the flour glue still hangs in the air. You pick up a small piece of red cloth that fell from one of the costumes and tuck it into a crack in the wall so it doesn't get lost. Your work here is done. You have helped the stories come to life. You take a deep breath of the damp air and turn back toward the stairs. You need to get back to the high walls. The night is still long, and there are many more miles to walk before the sun comes up. You feel a little bit lighter in your heart, as if the magic of the play has rubbed off on you, just a little bit. You turn your back on the bright torches and the happy shouts of the mummers' play. The sounds of the castle start to fade away as you walk toward the heavy stone arch of the outer gate. Your boots make a soft, deep sound as they sink into the fresh snow that has fallen while you were inside. It is much deeper here, away from the paths that people have cleared. In some places, it reaches up to your knees. It feels heavy and cold against your legs, but your new frieze coat is long enough to keep the worst of the chill away. You feel strong and warm as you leave the safety of the walls and head toward the dark line of the woods. The forest at night is a very different place than it is during the day. During the day, you can hear the birds and see the squirrels running through the brown leaves. But at night, especially a midwinter night like this, the woods are as still as a church. The trees are huge and black against the white ground. They look like giants that have been frozen in place. Most of them have no leaves now, and their branches look like thin, dark bones reaching up to touch the cold stars. You walk slowly, using your staff to feel for the ground beneath the snow. You do not want to trip on a hidden root or fall into a hole. As you enter the first line of trees, the wind drops away. The forest is so thick that it protects you from the biting breeze. The air here feels different. It is very still and smells strongly of pine and wet earth. It is a clean, sharp smell that wakes up your senses. You stop for a moment and look back toward the village. From here, the lights of the houses look like tiny orange sparks in the distance. The castle looks like a big, dark mountain. You are on your own now, in the deep white woods. A simple historical fact that you should know is why you are here. In the Middle Ages, people believed that winter was a time when the world went to sleep or even died. To make sure the world woke up again, they brought evergreens into their houses. These are plants like holly, ivy, and pine that stay green even in the deepest frost. By bringing these green things inside, people felt they were keeping a little bit of life safe from the cold. They believed the green leaves would remind the sun to come back and make the grass grow again. It was a way of bringing hope into their small, dark homes. You are looking for the holy plant, which we call holly. It is not always easy to find in the dark, but you know where it likes to grow. You walk deeper into the woods, where the ground is a bit more hilly. You look for a splash of dark color against the white snow. After a few minutes, you see it. Standing under the shelter of a giant oak tree is a thick bush of holly. Even in the dim light of the moon, the leaves look very shiny. They are a deep, dark green, almost black. You reach out and touch a leaf. It is thick and hard, and the edges are very sharp. You have to be careful not to prick your fingers. To cut the branches, you reach into your belt and pull out a small tool. This is a micro-history detail called a billhook. A billhook is a very simple iron tool that every woodsman carries. It has a short wooden handle and a thick blade that curves at the end like a hawk's beak. It is not meant for fighting. It is meant for work. You use the curved part of the blade to hook a branch and then use the sharp edge to slice through the wood. The iron is cold and heavy in your hand. You can feel the vibration in the handle as you make the first cut. The wood of the holly is very tough, but the billhook is sharp and cuts through it with a clean snap. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just stand in the middle of the bush. You are surrounded by the green leaves and the white snow. You do not move. You do not breathe for a few seconds. The silence of the deep woods is so loud it almost rings in your ears. You hear a tiny plop as a piece of snow falls from a high branch and hits the ground. Far away, you hear the crack of a frozen branch breaking under its own weight. It sounds like a loud bell in the quiet. You feel like the only person left in the whole world. It is not a lonely feeling. It is a very peaceful one. You feel like the forest is keeping a secret, and you are the only one allowed to hear it. You look closely at the branch you have cut. It is covered in bright red berries. In the moonlight, they look like tiny drops of red wax. These berries are a sign of life in the middle of the dead winter. You think about how pretty they will look when you hang them over the doorway of a small house. The red and the green will make the room look bright and happy. You cut a few more branches, making sure to take only what you need. You don't want to hurt the plant. You want it to be there next year, and the year after that. As you gather the holly into a bundle, you notice some other plants growing nearby. There is ivy climbing up the trunk of the oak tree. The ivy is also green, with leaves shaped like small hearts. Its stems are thin and hairy, clinging tight to the rough bark. You pull a few long strands of ivy away from the tree. They are very strong, like pieces of green rope. You can use these to tie your bundle of holly together. You wrap the ivy around the branches and tie a simple knot. Now you can carry the greenery easily over your shoulder. The work has made you a bit warmer, but the cold is starting to creep back into your boots. You look up through the branches at the sky. The moon is moving slowly, and you know the night is moving toward the very early hours of the morning. You turn back the way you came, following your own deep footprints in the snow. It is much easier to walk now that you have a path to follow. The holly bundle on your shoulder feels light and smells of the fresh outdoors. You walk past a small stream. In the summer, the water would be babbling over the rocks, but now the stream is silent. It is frozen into a solid path of clear ice. You can see the stones at the bottom of the water, looking like they are trapped behind a thick window. You walk carefully across a small wooden bridge. The wood is slippery with frost, and you hold onto the rail with one hand. You look down at the ice and see your own reflection for a moment, a dark shape with a bundle of green on its back. As you get closer to the edge of the woods, you see the first few houses of the village again. They look very small and humble after the giant trees of the forest. You feel a sense of relief to be back near the world of people. The forest is beautiful, but it is a wild place that does not care if you are cold or tired. The village is where the warmth is. You walk toward the first house and stop at the door. You take one of the small sprigs of holly and tuck it into the straw of the roof near the door. It is a small gift for the people sleeping inside. It is a way of bringing a bit of the forest strength and the hope of spring to their doorstep. Your boots are now heavy with wet snow, and your hands are a bit numb from the cold iron of the billhook. But you are happy. You have found the green life in the middle of the white death. You have the holy plant to protect the village and bring joy to the feast. You continue your walk back toward the castle, the red berries on your shoulder glowing faintly in the starlight. The watch continues, and the world is still safe under your care. You take a slow, deep breath of the freezing air, feeling the weight of the forest and the promise of the morning in every step you take. You leave the village behind and walk back through the big stone gates of the castle. Your feet feel heavy and wet from the snow in the woods, but you have a job to do. You move toward the great hall again. It is the middle of the night before the big feast. Everyone else is sleeping. The lords and ladies are in their high rooms, tucked under heavy furs. The servants are curled up in the warm rushes on the floor of the kitchen or the stables. But the great hall cannot be left alone. On this special night, the fire in the center of the room must never go out. You are the one who will make sure it stays alive. You push open the heavy door and step inside. The hall is much darker than it was when you were helping with the tables. The candles have all been blown out to save the precious wax. The only light comes from the giant stone hearth in the middle of the room. It is a soft, deep orange light. It does not reach the corners of the room or the high wooden roof. It just creates a small, warm circle in the middle of the dark. You walk toward it, your boots making a very quiet scuff sound on the dry rushes. The giant Yule log that you helped drag in earlier is now resting in the middle of the fire. It has been burning 4 hours. The outside of the log is black and charred, covered in a pattern of cracks that look like a map of a strange land. Inside those cracks, you can see the bright, glowing red of the wood as it turns into heat. A simple historical fact you should remember is that in these times, the fire was more than just a way to stay warm. It was the heart of the home. People believed that if the fire went out during the 12 days of Christmas, the luck of the house would go with it. They would have to wait until the next year for the luck to return. So, your job tonight is very important. You are guarding the luck and the life of the castle. To help you move the heavy wood, you pick up a special tool leaning against the stone. This is a micro-history detail called a fire fork. It is a very long, heavy rod made of solid iron. At the end, it has 2 sharp points, like a giant fork you would use for eating. It is very heavy, and the iron is cool in your hands at first. You slide the points of the fork under a smaller log that has fallen to the side. You lift it and push it back into the center of the flames. You can feel the heat on your face as you work. It is a dry, strong heat that makes your skin feel tight. As you move the wood, a cloud of tiny orange sparks flies up into the air. They dance and swirl like little golden insects. You watch them rise up toward the dark roof. They look so pretty against the blackness. Some of them land on the stone floor and blink out in a second. Others disappear into the shadows. You lean on your fire fork and watch the flames. They are many different colors. At the bottom, where the heat is strongest, The flames are a bright, clear blue. In the middle, they are a deep, rich orange. At the very top, they are a pale yellow, almost white. The wood makes a soft hissing and popping sound as the sap inside it gets hot. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just sit on a low wooden stool by the fire. You do not move. You do not make a sound. You just look into the heart of the glowing coals. The silence in the great hall is very deep. It is a different kind of silence than the one in the woods. Here, the silence feels safe and heavy. You can hear the stone walls of the castle groaning a little bit as they cool down in the night air. You hear the soft rustle of the rushes as a mouse moves somewhere in the dark. You feel like you are the only person awake in the whole world. The heat of the fire makes you feel very relaxed. Your eyes feel heavy, but you stay awake. You have to keep the watch. You look at the walls of the hall. In the flickering orange light, the shadows move back and forth. The long tables you built look like giant sleeping animals. The colorful cloths on the walls seem to move, making the knights and the trees in the pictures look like they are dancing. It is a very peaceful sight. You feel like the room is breathing with you. Every time the fire flares up, the room gets a little bit bigger. When the fire dies down, the shadows creep closer, making the room feel small and cozy. You reach into a small basket near the hearth and find some dried pine cones. You toss one into the fire. It stays still for a moment, and then suddenly the heat finds it. The pine cone opens up like a little wooden flower, and then bursts into a bright, happy flame. It smells wonderful, a sharp, clean smell of the forest mixed with the deep, heavy smell of the oak log. You toss in another one, watching the way the fire eats the wood. It is a simple thing, but it is very satisfying to watch. The night moves slowly. You check the windows high up in the walls. They are still dark, showing only the deep blue of the winter sky. The stars are still out there, shining over the frozen fields. You think about the people sleeping in the rooms nearby. They are warm because of the work you are doing. You feel a sense of pride in your tired muscles. Your hands are a little bit grey from the ash, and your new coat smells like wood smoke. But you don't mind. This is the smell of safety. You use the fire fork again to rake the grey ashes to the side. Under the ash, the coals are a beautiful, glowing pink. This is the hottest part of the fire. You take a few smaller pieces of dry ash wood and lay them carefully on top of the coals. You watch as the heat turns the wood from brown to black, and then thin lines of fire start to crawl along the bark. Soon, the new wood is burning brightly, and the circle of light in the hole grows a little bit wider. You have done your job well. The fire is strong and will last until the sun comes up. You lean back against a stone pillar. The stone is cool against your back, which feels good compared to the heat on your front. You feel like you are standing between two worlds, the cold of the castle and the heat of the hearth. You listen to the rhythmic crackle of the wood. It is a very boring, steady sound, like a slow clock ticking. It makes your mind feel quiet and still. You think about the feast that will happen here tomorrow. This floor will be full of people. There will be music and laughter and the sound of many voices. But for now, the hall belongs to you and the fire. The air in the hall is getting a little bit lighter. The deep black of the windows is turning into a soft, dark grey. You know that the morning is not far away. The longest night of the year is almost over. You stand up and stretch your arms high above your head. Your bones make a small pop sound in the quiet. You take one last look at the Yule log. It is still big and solid, glowing with a steady, honest light. The luck of the house is safe. The fire is burning bright. You put the fire fork back in its place and prepare to walk toward the door. The first part of the night shift is done, and you have kept the heart of the castle alive through the dark. You feel a deep sense of peace as you move through the shadows, the warmth of the embers still glowing in your mind. You leave the big, empty space of the great hall and walk toward a smaller stone room tucked away near the kitchen. This room is called the solar. Usually, it is a place for the Lord's family to sit, but tonight, while the high-born people are asleep, a few of the night workers have gathered here to share a moment of rest. The door is thick and fits tight in its frame to keep out the drafts. When you push it open, the air is thick with the smell of sweet malt and toasted grain. A small, cheerful fire is burning in a low hearth, casting a soft, golden glow over the three men sitting on the floor. One of the men is Peter, the woodcutter you saw earlier. He has taken off his heavy boots and is rubbing his feet near the heat of the fire. He gestures for you to sit down on a low wooden bench. The wood of the bench is old and dark, polished by many years of use. It feels smooth and solid beneath you. You lean your staff against the wall and feel the tension start to leave your shoulders. Your body is still buzzing from the cold of the woods and the heat of the great hall. But here, in this small room, everything feels calm. In the middle of the group is a large earthen pot sitting on the warm stones near the fire. Inside the pot is the winter ale. A simple historical fact you should know that in the Middle Ages, ale was not just a drink for fun. It was a main part of what people ate every day. Because the water in the village well was not always clean, people brewed ale. They boiled the water with grain, which killed any bad things in the water and made it safe to drink. They called it liquid bread because it was full of the same goodness as a loaf of wheat or barley. For a man working the night shift in the freezing cold, a cup of warm ale is like a meal and a blanket all in one. Peter reaches for a long iron tool leaning against the hearth. This is a micro-history detail called her loggerhead. It is a simple iron rod with a heavy, round ball at one end. He has left the iron ball sitting in the middle of the red-hot coals until it is glowing a bright, angry orange. He picks up a wooden bowl, which is called a mazer. The mazer is carved from a single piece of maple wood. It is wide and shallow, with a thin rim of silver around the top. Peter fills the mazer with cool ale from the pot. Then he takes the glowing loggerhead and dips the hot iron ball straight into the liquid. As the hot iron hits the ale, there is a loud, violent hiss and a cloud of thick white steam. The liquid bubbles and foam rises up to the brim of the bowl. This is how they mold the drink. The heat of the iron caramelizes the sugar in the ale, making it taste sweet and smoky. Peter hands the bowl to you. You hold it with both hands. The wood of the mazer is warm, but the silver rim is hot against your lip. You take a slow sip. The ale is thick and rich. It tastes of toasted oats, honey, and a hint of the bitter hops gathered from the hedges. You feel the warmth travel from your mouth, down your throat, and into your belly like a small, glowing coal. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just sit and listen. You do not talk. None of the men talk. The only sound is the crackle of the small logs in the fire and the rhythmic glug as the next man takes a drink. You look at the walls of the room. They are covered in heavy woolen cloths to keep the heat in. The shadows of the men are small and steady on the floor. You feel a deep sense of friendship with these people. You do not need to say anything to know that you are all feeling the same thing. You are all tired, you are all cold, and you are all glad for this moment of peace. After a few minutes, Peter starts to speak in a very low, quiet voice. He does not tell a long or complicated story. He tells a simple story about a winter many years ago, when the snow was so deep that it reached the tops of the doors. He describes the way the village looked, like a world made of white clouds. He talks about how they had to dig tunnels to get to the barns to feed the cows. His voice is deep and slow, like the sound of a heavy bell. It is a boring story, the kind of story you have heard many times before, but it is comforting. It reminds you that people have survived many winters before this one, and they will survive many more. The other man, a young stable hand named Wat, tells a story about a white stag he saw in the woods during the last full moon. He says the stag looked like it was made of moonlight, and that it stood perfectly still, watching him, before it vanished into the trees. You listen to the sound of his voice, and watch the way his hands move as he talks. His hands are rough and covered in small scars from his work with the horses, but they move gently in the air. You think about the white woods you just walked through and the silence you found there. You realize that everyone has their own secret version of the night. You take another sip of the ale. It is cooling down now, becoming thicker and sweeter. You look at the mazer in your hands. You can see the grain of the wood, the beautiful swirling patterns that the tree made as it grew. You think about the man who carved this bowl. He must have spent many hours sanding the wood and fitting the silver rim. It is a simple object, but it is beautiful because it was made with care. It is a tool for sharing, and it feels good to hold it. The fire is burning low now, turning into a pile of soft, grey ash with a few red eyes of coal peeking through. The room is getting a bit darker, and the warmth of the ale is making you feel very sleepy. You lean your head back against the wall. The stone is hard, but your new woolen coat provides a soft cushion. You close your eyes for just a second. You can still smell the malt and the wood smoke. You can still hear the low mumble of your friends' voices. It is a perfect moment of rest. You feel like you are floating in a warm, dark sea, far away from the wind and the frost. But the night is not over. You know that soon you must stand up and go back to your post. You take one last, long drink of the ale, draining the bowl. The last bit of liquid is full of spices and bits of grain. It is the best part. You hand the empty mazer back to Peter, who places it carefully on the table. You stand up slowly, your legs feeling a bit heavy, but much stronger than they were before. You pick up your staff and pull your mantle tight. You look at your friends. They are also starting to move, getting ready to go back to their own jobs. Wat is putting on his heavy leather gloves, and Peter is pulling his boots back on. No one says goodbye. You don't need to. You have shared the ale and the fire, and that is enough. You turn toward the door and step out of the solar. The hallway is cold and dark, but the warmth of the drink is still in your chest. You feel ready for whatever the rest of the night brings. You walk back toward the courtyard, your boots making a steady, rhythmic sound on the stone, feeling the weight of the stories and the strength of the liquid bread guiding you forward into the shadows. You leave the small room and the warmth of your friends, stepping back into the quiet shadows of the castle's inner courtyard. The moon has climbed to the very top of the sky now. It looks like a polished silver plate hanging in the dark. You decide to find a spot that is a bit more sheltered for the next hour. You walk toward a small wooden shed that sits against the inner wall. This is the carpenter's shop. During the day, it is a loud place full of the sound of hammers and the shush-shush of long saws. But now it is perfectly still. The air inside smells strongly of fresh sawdust and old sap. It is a dry, woody smell that feels clean in your nose. You find a small tallow candle and light it. The flame is yellow and a bit smoky, but it gives enough light for what you want to do. You sit down on a heavy wooden bench. The top of the bench is covered in small nicks and cuts from years of work. You reach into a pile of wood scraps in the corner and find a small piece of willow. The wood is pale and soft. It feels light in your hand, almost like it is made of dried foam. Willow is a good wood for this kind of work because it does not split easily when you cut it. A simple historical fact you might like to know is that in the Middle Ages, there were no shops where you could buy toys. Most children had very few things to play with. A toy was a very special treasure. They were almost always made by hand by a father, a brother, or a local worker, using whatever was laying around. A bit of clay could become a small doll. A piece of old cloth could be stuffed with wool to make a ball, and a small scrap of wood from the carpenter's floor could become anything a child could imagine. For the children in the village, Christmas morning is the time they might receive one of these small, handmade wonders. You reach into your belt and pull out your tool. This is a micro-history detail called a whittle knife. It is a very simple knife with a short, thick blade and a handle made of smoothed bone. The blade is kept very sharp, so sharp that it can slice through the wood as easily as if it were soft cheese. You hold the piece of willow in one hand and the knife in the other. You begin to shave away the outer bark. The bark is dark and rough, but as you peel it away, the white, clean wood beneath is revealed. The curls of bark fall onto your lap and then onto the floor, making a soft ticking sound as they land. You are making a small horse. You start by shaping the body, making it round and smooth. You move the knife slowly, always cutting away from your body. You can feel the grain of the wood. The grain is like the history of the tree, showing how it grew in the wind and the rain. Sometimes the knife hits a hard knot in the wood, and you have to use a bit more strength to push through it. The sound of the knife is a very quiet sliver sound. It is a very relaxing rhythm. You are not in a hurry. You have all night, and the wood is patient. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just focus on the work. You do not look at the shadows or listen for the wind. You just watch the tip of the knife move through the whitewood. You hear the slow, steady beat of your own heart. You hear the tiny crackle of the candle as it burns. The world feels very small right now, just the size of this wooden bench and the piece of willow in your hands. You feel a sense of peace. You are creating something out of nothing. You are turning a scrap of rubbish into a gift. After the body is shaped, you start on the legs. This is the hardest part. You have to be very careful not to cut too deep, or the leg will snap off. You use the very tip of the whittle knife to carve the small hooves. You make tiny notches in the wood to show where the knees are. Your fingers are covered in a fine white dust from the wood. It feels soft, like flour. You blow the dust away, and a small cloud of it dances in the candlelight before vanishing into the dark corners of the shed. Next, you carve the head. You give the horse a long neck and a proud, curved face. You use the point of the knife to make the tiny holes for the eyes. As you work, the horse starts to look alive. It is no longer just a piece of wood. It has a shape and a spirit. You think about the little boy who will find this horse in the morning. He might be the son of one of the stable hands. He spends his days watching the big, powerful horses of the knights, and now he will have a small one of his own to keep in his pocket. He will probably name it and take it with him everywhere he goes. This thought makes you smile quietly to yourself. You find a small piece of rough leather on the floor. You rub it over the surface of the wooden horse. This is how you polish it. The leather is slightly scratchy, and it wears down any sharp edges or splinters. As you rub, the wood starts to shine. It becomes very smooth to the touch, feeling almost like silk or polished stone. You run your thumb over the horse's back. It feels warm from the friction of your hand. It is a simple object, but it is beautiful because it is true. It shows the shape of a horse in a way that is honest and simple. You look around the shop for one more thing. You find a small pot of dark oil made from crushed nuts. You dip a corner of a rag into the oil and wipe it over the willow. The wood drinks the oil up greedily. The color changes from a pale white to a deep, honey gold. The grain of the wood becomes much clearer, showing beautiful swirling patterns. The smell of the nut oil is rich and earthy, mixing with the smell of the sawdust. The horse looks finished now. It looks like it could gallop right off the bench if it wanted to. The candle is getting low, the wax spilling over the side in a long, frozen wave. You stand up and stretch your back. Your fingers are a bit stiff from holding the small knife so tightly, but they feel good. You pick up the wooden horse and hold it up to the light. It is small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. It is light and warm and smells of the forest. You tuck it carefully into a small, dry pocket inside your coat. You will leave it on the doorstep of the stable hand's house on your way back to the village later. You blow out the candle, and the shop is plunged back into the deep blue light of the moon. You stand there for a moment in the dark, letting your eyes adjust. The smell of the wood and the oil is still very strong. You feel a sense of quiet joy. You have spent an hour of the night shift making something that will bring a smile to a child's face. It is a small thing, but on a night like this, small things matter. You pick up your staff and step out of the shed. The wooden horse a secret weight in your pocket. The stars are still bright, and the frost is still thick, but the world feels a little bit kinder as you move back into the silent courtyard. You leave the quiet of the carpenter's shed and walk toward the middle of the courtyard. The night has reached a very special point. The air feels thinner and even colder than before, as if the whole world is holding its breath. You look up at the great stone tower of the church, which stands tall against the black sky. Suddenly, the silence of the night is broken. A deep, heavy clang rings out from the bell tower. It is followed by another, and then another. These are the midnight bells. A simple historical fact you should know is that bells were the voice of the village. Most people did not have clocks in their houses. They didn't have watches on their wrists. They lived their lives by the sound of the church bells. The bells told them when to wake up, when to work, and when to pray. But on Christmas night, the bells have a special job. They ring to tell everyone that the longest night is halfway over. They ring to wake up the soul of the village. The sound is meant to drive away the darkness and welcome the light that is coming with the morning. You stand perfectly still as the sound washes over you. The bells are made of thick, heavy iron and bronze. When the giant wooden hammer hits the metal, the sound is so loud you can feel it in your chest. It is a deep, vibrating thud that seems to shake the very ground beneath your boots. You can feel the stone walls of the castle humming with the noise. The sound travels far out over the frozen fields and into the deep woods, telling every living thing that the middle of the night has arrived. You walk closer to the church to see the men working. This is a micro-history detail called change ringing. Inside the base of the tower, 4 men are standing in a circle. Each man is holding a thick rope made of braided hemp. The ropes go all the way up through a hole in the wooden ceiling to the bells high above. The men are not pulling all at once. They move in a careful rhythm. One man pulls, then the next, then the next. The ropes shish as they slide through the air, and the wooden floor creaks under the men's weight. You can see the sweat on their foreheads, despite the cold. Pulling. A heavy bell is hard, physical work that requires great strength and perfect timing. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just listen to the pattern of the notes. You do not try to count them or think about the time. You just let the music fill the air. The notes are not like a song you would sing. They are a series of loud, crashing waves, high notes and low notes mixed together, creating a beautiful, messy noise that feels full of life. Between each strike, there is a tiny echo that bounces off the stone houses of the village. It sounds like the earth itself is singing a song of iron and stone. It is a very powerful feeling to be standing so close to such a giant sound. You look up at the tower. You cannot see the bells in the dark, but you can imagine them swinging back and forth in their heavy wooden frames. They are cold, dark shapes of metal, but when they move, they become alive. You think about how many times these same bells have rung over the years. They rang for the birth of kings and for the end of wars. They have rung through hundreds of winters, just like this one. They are a constant part of life, a sound that connects the people of today to the people of 100 years ago. The ringing continues for a long time. It feels like the sound is clearing the air, blowing away the shadows of the long dark. You see a few lights starting to appear in the windows of the village. The bells have done their job. People are waking up in their warm beds, hearing the sound and knowing that they are safe. Some will get up to go to the midnight service at the church, while others will just turn over and go back to sleep with a smile, knowing that the morning is on its way. One of the bell ringers loses his rhythm for a second, and two bells strike almost at the same time. The sound is a loud, jarring clash that makes your ears ring. The man quickly finds his place again, and the steady dong, dong, dong returns. You watch the ropes dance up and down. The men's hands are rough and calloused from the hemp, but they hold the ropes with great care. They know that the voice of the village is in their hands. They are the ones who tell the world that the night is turning toward the day. As the ringing starts to slow down, the notes become further apart. The sound becomes softer, losing its sharp edge. Finally, the last man gives one final, gentle pull. The last note rings out, long and low. It hangs in the air for what feels like a minute, slowly fading away until it is just a tiny hum in the distance. Then, the silence returns, but it is not the same silence as before. The air feels different now, as if it has been cleaned. The night feels lighter, less heavy. You look at the bell ringers. They let go of the ropes and lean against the stone walls, catching their breath. They do not talk, they just nod to each other. They have finished their task. They will now go into the church to join the monks, or perhaps find a warm spot by a fire to rest their tired arms. You feel a sense of respect for them. They have given the village its voice on the most important night of the year. You turn away from the church and start to walk back toward the castle gate. The stars are still bright, and the frost is still white, but the world feels more awake. The bells have broken the spell of the dark. You feel a new energy in your own steps. You are no longer just waiting for the night to end. You are moving toward the morning. The sound of the bells is still echoing in your mind, a steady, iron heartbeat that gives you strength. You reach the gatehouse and look out over the village one last time. The moon is starting to sink toward the horizon, and the sky is a very deep, velvety purple. The watch is not over, but the most silent part of the night has passed. You take a long, slow breath of the cold air, feeling the vibration of the bells still humming in the soles of your boots. You are the history watchman, and the middle of the night has been marked. You turn back into the shadows, ready to see what the early hours of the morning will bring to the frozen world. The sound of the midnight bells still humming in the air as you walk back toward the castle's lower courtyard. The world feels a bit more alive now, even though the sun is still many hours away. You find yourself drawn back toward the kitchen buildings. The work there has changed. The heavy roasting is mostly done, and the air smells less like raw meat and more like strong herbs and sharp vinegar. You step inside, and the heat hits you again. But it feels different now. It is a busy, focused heat. In the center of the room, on the largest wooden table, sits the most important dish of the whole Christmas feast. It is the boar's head. A simple historical fact you should know is that the wild boar was the king of the forest. It was a very strong and angry animal, and hunting one was very dangerous, because the boar was so hard to catch. Serving its head at the Christmas feast was a way to show that the Lord was a great hunter and a powerful leader. It was a sign of winning over the wild, dark woods. The head is not just food. It is a trophy. It tells everyone that the winter may be cold and the woods may be scary, but inside the castle walls, the people are the masters. You walk closer to the table. The head is huge, much bigger than you expected. The skin has been cooked until it is a deep, dark brown, almost black. It has been scrubbed and cleaned until the bristles are gone, leaving the skin looking like polished leather. The smell is very strong. It is the smell of rich meat mixed with something sharp and tingly. One of the cooks is standing over the head, holding a small bowl of yellow paste. This is a micro-history detail called mustard sauce. In the Middle Ages, mustard was one of the most popular flavors because it was cheap to grow, but had a very strong kick that made the heavy meat taste better. The cook is using a small brush to coat the ears and the snout of the boar with the thick, spicy yellow sauce. You see a small basket of decorations next to the table. You reach out and pick up a sprig of rosemary. It is a beautiful green color, and when you rub the thin leaves between your fingers, it smells like a pine forest after a rainstorm. You help the cook by tucking the rosemary into the gaps around the boar's neck. The green leaves look very bright against the dark, cooked skin. You also find some bay leaves, which are flat and stiff. You place these around the base of the head, making it look like the animal is resting on a bed of forest leaves. The cook takes a large, bright red apple from a wooden bowl. He carefully pushes the apple into the boar's open mouth. The red of the apple and the dark brown of the head make a very striking picture. It is a strange sight, the fierce animal with the sweet fruit. You watch the cook work. He moves with great care, as if he's working on a piece of art rather than a meal. He wants it to look perfect, because when this dish is carried into the great hall tomorrow, everyone will stand up and sing a special song just for the boar. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just look at the boar's eyes. The cook has replaced the real eyes with two large, dried plums. In the flickering light of the kitchen torches, the plums look dark and shiny, almost like the animal is looking back at you. You stand perfectly still. The kitchen is quiet for a second. You hear the drip of fat into a pan and the soft hiss of the fire. You feel a sense of history in this room. People have been preparing this dish for hundreds of years. You are seeing a tradition that is older than the castle itself. It feels very still and very important. The most impressive part of the boar are its tusks. These are the long, curved teeth that grow out of the sides of its mouth. They are made of white bone and look very sharp. The cook has polished them with a bit of oil until they shine like silver. He tells you that these tusks show how old and strong the boar was. He handles the head with a kind of respect. Even though the animal is gone, its strength is still there in the shape of its head. You run your finger along the curve of one tusk. It is cool and very smooth, like a piece of ivory. You help the cook lift the head onto a giant silver platter. The platter is heavy and cold, and it makes a loud clink as it touches the wooden table. Around the edges of the platter, you lay down more greenery holly with its red berries and ivy with its dark hearts. The red, green, and gold of the decorations make the whole dish look like a celebration. It is a beautiful and slightly scary sight all at once. It is the true center of a medieval Christmas. One of the younger kitchen boys is busy grinding spices in a stone bowl. He's using a heavy stone tool called a pestle to crush cloves and peppercorns. The sound is a steady grind, grind, grind. The smell of the fresh spices rises up in a little cloud of dust. It makes your nose tickle. These spices will be sprinkled over the head at the very last second to give it a wonderful scent as it is carried through the hall. You think about how the smell will fill the great hall, mixing with the wood smoke and the smell of the fresh rushes on the floor. You see a small pot of gold leaf sitting on a shelf. This is very thin, real gold that has been hammered until it is like paper. The cook takes a tiny bit of it and presses it onto the boar's tusks. The gold sticks to the bone, making the tusks look like they are made of treasure. This is how the Lord shows his wealth. To have a boar's head with golden tusks is the highest honor. It is a way of saying that even the wild things of the forest bow down to the power of the castle. The preparation is nearly finished. The cook covers the head with a light linen cloth to keep the dust away until the morning. He looks tired, but he has a look of pride on his face. He has created something wonderful. You feel lucky to have seen the behind-the-scenes work. Most people will only see the finished dish being carried high above the heads of the servants tomorrow. They won't know about the careful brushing of the mustard, the polishing of the tusks, or the scent of the rosemary. You take one last look at the shape under the linen cloth. The kitchen is starting to wind down for a short rest before the final morning rush. You feel the heat of the ovens one last time and then turn toward the door. You need to head back out into the night. Your time in the warm, spicy air of the kitchen is over for now. You step out into the courtyard, and the cold air feels very thin and sharp. You pull your coat tight and look up at the moon, which is starting to move toward the west. The watch is moving into the early hours of the morning, and the world is still waiting for the sun. You walk away from the kitchen, the image of the golden tusked boar still bright in your mind as you move back into the silent shadows. You step out of the kitchen door and into the shadows of the lower courtyard. The cold air is very sharp now, but the heavy smell of the boar's head still lingers on your woolen mantle. You are carrying a small wooden bucket. It is heavy and a bit greasy on the outside. Inside are the scraps from the night's work, broken bits of hard bread, some fatty pieces of meat that the cooks trimmed away, and the edges of the thick trenchers that were too stale to be used. In the village, nothing is ever thrown away. Everything has a use, and tonight, these scraps are for the castle's most loyal workers. You walk toward the far corner of the courtyard, near the base of the north tower. This is where the kennels are built. The kennels are low buildings made of thick timber and stone. They have a roof of heavy slate to keep the rain out. As you get closer, you hear a sound. It is not the loud barking you might expect. Instead, it is a low, rhythmic thumping. It is the sound of many heavy tails hitting the wooden walls. The dogs know you are coming. They can smell the meat and the bread in your bucket from a long way off. A simple historical fact: you should know that dogs in the Middle Ages were very important. They were not just pets that sat by the fire. They were workers, just like you. Some were big, strong dogs used for hunting wild boars and deer in the deep woods. Others were small, quick dogs used to catch rats in the grain stores. Some were guard dogs, kept to bark if a stranger tried to climb the walls at night. Without the dogs, the castle would not be safe, and there would be much less food on the table. People respected the dogs because they were brave and loyal. You reach the wooden gate of the kennel and stop. You can see the dogs in the dim light of the moon. They are large, powerful animals with thick coats of fur. Most of them are a sandy brown or a dark grey color. Their eyes glow like small green lamps in the dark. You see one dog standing at the front. He is a lima. This is a micro-history detail you might find interesting. A lima is a special kind of dog used to find the scent of a deer. He has very long ears and a big, wet nose. Around his neck, he wears a collar of estate. This is a simple collar made of thick, oiled leather with a heavy iron ring. The leather is smooth and dark, and it smells of animal fat and old grass. You reach into your bucket and pull out a large piece of the stale trencher bread. You toss it over the gate. The bread is hard, like a piece of wood. One of the big grey dogs catches it in the air with a loud snap of his jaws. You hear the crunch, crunch, crunch as he breaks the bread apart. He wags his tail so hard that his whole body shakes. You toss another piece, and then a handful of the meat scraps. The dogs do not fight. They have been trained to wait their turn. There is a steady sound of chewing and the soft thud of paws on the stone floor. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just watch the dogs eat. You stand perfectly still, leaning against the cold stone of the tower. The only sound is the rhythmic chewing of the hounds and the soft huff of their breath. The air in the kennel is warm and smells of wet fur and straw. It is a very honest, simple smell. You feel a sense of peace. These animals do not care about the gold on the boar's tusks or the expensive spices in the kitchen. They only care about the warmth of the straw and the taste of the bread. You feel like you understand them. You are both out here in the dark, doing your jobs, while the rest of the world sleeps. One of the younger dogs, a small hound with white spots, comes right up to the gate. He puts his nose through the wooden bars and lets out a tiny, soft whine. You reach out and pat his head. His fur is thick and a bit rough, like a woolen blanket that has been left in the rain. His head is warm, and you can feel the strength in his neck. He licks your hand with a tongue that feels like a piece of warm, wet velvet. You give him a special bit of fatty beef from the bottom of the bucket. He gobbles it down, and then rests his chin on the bottom bar of the gate, looking at you with big, calm eyes. You move down the line of the kennels, making sure every dog gets a little something. You see the greyhounds, which are thin and long-legged. They look like they are made of nothing but bone and muscle. In the summer, they can run faster than a horse, but tonight, they are curled up together in a big pile of golden straw to stay warm. You toss some bread into their pen, and they lift their heads slowly, their long noses twitching. They eat quietly, their movements graceful even in the dark. You think about how the dogs will be used tomorrow. During the big feast, some of them might be allowed into the great hall. They will sit behind their masters and wait for more scraps to be thrown onto the floor. It is a messy way to eat, but it is part of the tradition. The dogs help clean the floor by eating the bits of food that fall into the rushes. It is a simple and clever system. The people get a clean haul, and the dogs get a full belly. Your bucket is nearly empty now. You scrape the last few crumbs of bread into the palm of your hand and offer them to the lead limer. He takes them gently, his whiskers tickling your skin. You wipe your greasy hand on a patch of clean straw. You feel a bit tired, but the company of the dogs has cheered you up. They are simple creatures, and they remind you that the most important things in life are food, warmth, and a safe place to sleep. The moon is starting to move further across the sky. You look up and see that the stars are beginning to fade just a little bit. The deepest part of the night is over, and the first hint of the very early morning is coming. You pick up your bucket and turn away from the kennels. The dogs settle back down into their straw. You hear the rustle of the grass as they move and the deep sigh of a dog falling asleep. The thumping of the tail stops, and the courtyard becomes silent once more. You walk back toward the center of the castle, your boots making a lonely sound on the hard ground. You feel the weight of the empty bucket in your hand. It was a small task, but an important one. The dogs are happy, and they will be ready to protect the castle when the sun comes up. You pull your new frieze coat tighter around your chest. The wind is still cold, but you feel a little bit warmer inside. You have shared the Christmas spirit with the animals, and that makes the long night feel a bit shorter. You turn toward the next part of your watch, the memory of the warm, wet noses and the wagging tails staying with you as you move back into the cold silver light of the stars. You leave the castle courtyard and walk back through the big stone gates. The world is very still. The moon is hanging low in the sky, looking like a pale, cold ghost. You walk down the path toward the village houses. Most of the houses are dark, but you are not heading for your own bed yet. You are carrying a heavy bundle under your arm. It is a large, thick blanket made of brown wool. It is the kind of blanket that takes many months to make, from shearing the sheep to spinning the yarn and weaving it on a big wooden frame. This is a gift from the castle for one of the oldest people in the village. You stop in front of a very small house at the end of the lane. The roof is made of thick yellow straw, and the walls are made of mud and wood. It looks like a little hill sitting in the snow. This is where old Agnes lives. She has lived in this village for more years than anyone can count. She saw your father grow up, and she saw the old lord pass away. Now, she's old and her bones ache when the frost comes. In the winter, the cold is a thief that tries to steal the heat from people who are not strong enough to fight it. A simple historical fact you should know is that the people of the Middle Ages took great care of their neighbors. They believed that during the 12 days of Christmas, no one should be left alone or hungry. They called this Almsgiving. It was not just about giving money. It was about giving time and warmth. They knew that a village is like a family. If one person is cold, the whole village feels a bit darker. So, while others are sleeping, you are here to share the warmth of the castle. You push the door open very slowly. It does not have a lock, just a simple wooden latch. The air inside the house is thick and smells of old smoke and dried herbs. It is much warmer than the air outside, but it is still a bit chilly. A small fire is burning in a stone hearth in the middle of the room. The flames are very low, just small blue tongues dancing on a pile of red coals. You see old Agnes sitting in a large wooden chair near the fire. She is wrapped in several old shawls, and she is fast asleep. Her chin is resting on her chest, and her hands are tucked into her sleeves. You move quietly, making sure your boots do not crunch too loudly on the dirt floor. You unwrap the new woolen blanket. It is heavy and feels a bit oily, which is good because that means the natural wool fat is still in it. This fat helps keep the heat in and the damp out. You step closer to the old woman and lay the blanket gently over her knees. You tuck the edges around her feet. The wool is a deep, honest brown color. You can see the tiny bits of dried grass still caught in the weave. It is a blanket made of the earth and the sun. You see a small metal pot sitting near the coals. You decide to make her something to warm her up when she wakes. This is a micro-history detail called a posset. A posset is a special drink for people who are feeling weak or cold. You take a little bit of hot milk from a jar and mix it with a splash of clear ale. You add a tiny bit of honey and a pinch of ground ginger. As you stir the drink with a wooden spoon, it starts to foam up. The smell is sweet and spicy. It is a smell that means comfort. You place the pot back on the warm stones so it stays hot. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just sit on the floor near the hearth. You lean your back against the mud wall. You do not move. You do not speak. You just watch the way the firelight moves across the room. You hear the tick-tick of a beetle in the wooden beams above. You hear the low, steady sound of the wind as it brushes against the straw roof. It sounds like someone is whispering a very long secret. The silence in the small house is very deep. You feel like you are in a little bubble of safety, far away from the big world of knights and castles. You look at the old woman's face. Her skin is full of lines, like the bark of an old oak tree. Each line is a story of a year she has lived. You feel a great sense of peace being here with her. You look around the room. There are bundles of dried plants hanging from the ceiling. You see lavender, mint, and sage. These are the medicines of the village. In the summer, Agnes gathers them from the fields and the woods. She knows which leaf will stop a cough and which root will help a person sleep. She has spent her whole life helping others, and now it is your turn to help her. You feel a bit of the weight of the night leave your shoulders. Doing a kind thing for another person makes the cold feel less sharp. The fire is starting to die down, so you pick up a small log from the basket and place it carefully on the coals. You do not want to make a big flame that might wake her. Just a steady glow to keep the room warm. The wood is dry ash, and it catches quickly. You watch the thin line of orange fire crawl along the edge of the log. It makes a very small pop sound as a tiny pocket of air escapes. The light makes the shadows of the hanging herbs move back and forth on the ceiling, like they are dancing to a very slow song. You think about the morning that is coming. Soon, the village will be full of the sound of people going to the church. They will be wearing their best clothes and calling out to their friends. But for now, the village belongs to the old and the tired. You look at the silver coin in your pouch and the new coat on your back. You realize that you have a lot to be thankful for. You have the strength to walk the walls and the health to face the frost. Giving this blanket to Agnes is a way of sharing your luck with her. After a while, old Agnes moves a little bit in her sleep. She feels the weight of the new blanket and pulls it closer to her chin. She does not wake up, but a small smile touches her lips. She looks more comfortable now, less brittle. You feel a sense of satisfaction. You have done what you came to do. You have brought the warmth of the castle into the heart of the village. You have kept the midwinter promise of looking after your own. You stand up slowly, being careful not to let your mantle brush against the pot of posset. You walk back to the door and lift the wooden latch. You take one last look at the small room, the glowing fire, and the sleeping woman. It is a humble place, but it is full of life and history. You feel like the room is a treasure chest, holding the memories of the village inside its mud walls. You step back out into the night and close the door with a very soft click. The air outside feels even colder now because you have been in the warmth. But you do not mind. Your heart feels steady and strong. The moon has moved even further across the sky, and the stars are starting to look a bit dim. The long night is entering its final hours. You pick up your staff and start to walk back toward the village well. You have more to see and more to do before your watch is ended. You move through the shadows, a silent guardian of the village, carrying the memory of the sweet-smelling posset and the brown wool blanket as you face the last of the winter frost. You leave the quiet house of old Agnes and walk back toward the great hall. The air has a new feeling now. It is still very cold, but the deep, heavy silence of the middle night has been replaced by a strange, bubbling energy. As you enter the hall, you see that the rules of the world have been turned upside down. This is the time of the Lord of Misrule. A simple historical fact you should know is that during the 12 days of Christmas, the normal order of life was often flipped. A servant might be chosen to act as a king, and the real lord might sit at the lower end of the table. It was a way for everyone to let off steam and forget the hard work of the year for a little while. In the center of the hall, a young man named Robin, who usually works in the stables cleaning out the stalls, is sitting on a high wooden chair. He has been given a crown made of gilded cardboard and a robe made of old, bright red silk. He is the Lord of Misrule. Around him, people are laughing and dancing in a messy circle. The music is loud and fast, played on a small wooden pipe and a drum made of stretched goat skin. The drum makes a thump, thump, thump sound that you can feel in your feet. It is not a serious or grand dance. It is a wild, happy jumping that makes the rushes on the floor fly up into the air. You walk to the edge of the circle and watch. You see the Lord of Misrule waving a wooden wand. This is a micro-history detail called a bauble. It is a short stick with a carved head on the end that looks like a tiny person wearing a pointed hat with bells. When Robin shakes the bauble, the bells make a sharp jingle-jingle sound. Under the rules of the night, if the Lord of Misrule tells you to do something, you have to do it. You see him point his wand at a tall, serious guard. He commands the guard to hop on one leg and sing a song about a fat pig. The guard laughs and does as he is told, and the whole room erupts in a giant roar of laughter. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just lean against a stone pillar and watch the chaos. You do not join in the dancing. Your job is still to keep the watch, even in the middle of the fun. You listen to the mix of sounds, the high whistle of the pipe, the steady beat of the drum, and the loud, honest laughter of people who are usually very quiet. You smell the heat of the many bodies, the scent of the spilled ale, and the sweet smoke of the Yule log. In this moment, the castle feels very small and very warm, a tiny island of light and noise in a vast, dark winter. You feel a sense of joy for these people. They work so hard every day, and seeing them play is a beautiful thing. You notice that even the clothing is being used for fun. Some people have turned their tunics inside out to show the rougher side, or they have tied colourful ribbons into their hair. Robin, the Lord of Misrule, calls for more drink. A large wooden bowl, called a wassail bowl, is passed around. It is made of apple wood and has been polished until it glows. Inside is a mix of warm ale, sugar, and roasted apples that have burst open to look like white wool. This is called lamb's wool because of how the apple bits look. You take a turn at the bowl when it comes to you. The drink is sweet and thick, and the bits of apple feel soft on your tongue. The dancing gets faster. The shadows on the walls are no longer steady. They are jumping and stretching like giant ghosts. You see the real lord of the castle sitting on a simple bench, watching Robin with a smile on his face. He looks relaxed, glad to let someone else be the leader for a few hours. This flipping of the world reminds everyone that they are all human, underneath the fine clothes of a lord or the rough wool of a servant. Everyone likes to laugh and be merry. It is a powerful lesson that is only taught during the dark of winter. Robin stands up on his chair and shouts for a story. The music stops, and for a second, the hall is quiet. Only the crackle of the fire can be heard. He tells a funny story about a priest who lost his trousers in a bramble bush. It is a silly, simple story, but the way he tells it, with big movements of his arms, makes everyone lean forward. When he finishes, they all cheer and the music starts up again, even louder than before. You feel the floorboards thrum under your boots. The energy in the room is like a physical weight. You look at the high windows. The sky is no longer pitch black. It is a very dark, smoky grey. You know that the time of misrule will end as soon as the sun touches the horizon. When the light comes back, Robin will go back to the stables, and the Lord will go back to his high chair. But for now, the world is upside down, and that is a good thing. It makes the winter feel less heavy. You feel a bit of the tiredness leave your own body as you watch your friends enjoy themselves. You see a small group of people playing a game in the corner. They are trying to catch a piece of dried fruit hanging from a string using only their mouths. It is called snapdragon or bobbing. Their faces are red from the effort, and they are covered in sticky syrup. You laugh quietly to yourself. The hall is a mess of rushes, spilled drink, and happy people. It is a wonderful, beautiful mess. It is the sound of a village that refuses to be sad, even when the world is frozen and dark. The Lord of Misrule points his wand at you. He tells you to take a piece of holly and wear it in your cap. You reach into the bundle you gathered earlier and pull out a small sprig with 3 red berries. You tuck it into the side of your woolen hat. The leaves are prickly, but you don't mind. You are part of the fun now, in your own quiet way. Robin nods to you, his eyes sparkling behind his cardboard crown. He knows you are the one keeping them safe while they play. The fire in the hearth is still giant and bright, throwing out a heat that makes the front of your coat feel hot to the touch. You take one last look at the dancing circle before you decide it is time to move on. The night is moving into its final phase. You need to check the courtyard and the gates one more time. The laughter follows you as you walk toward the door. It is a warm, happy sound that makes the cold air outside seem a little less scary. You step out of the hall and the door shuts, cutting the noise in half. You stand in the quiet courtyard for a moment, adjusting to the dark again. The stars are fading fast now. You can see the shapes of the buildings more clearly. You feel a sense of peace. The night shift has been long, but it has been full of life. You have seen the work, the prayer, the kindness, and now the play. You pull your mantle tight and pick up your staff. The morning is coming, and you are ready for it. You turn toward the outer walls. The sprig of holly in your cap, a tiny reminder of the joy you just left behind in the golden light of the hall. The wild music has stopped. The Lord of Misrule has stepped down from his high chair, his cardboard crown now sitting crookily on a table. You walk back into the great hall, and the change is very big. Only a few minutes ago, the room was full of jumping and shouting. Now, it is mostly silent. A few of the servants have not even made it back to their own beds. They are curled up in the warm rushes near the walls, their deep, rhythmic snores filling the air. The hall feels tired. It looks like a person who has stayed up too late and needs a long rest. You lean your staff against a pillar and prepare to help with the cleanup. A simple historical fact you should know is that the Great Hall was not just a place for eating and dancing. It was also the main bedroom for many of the people who worked in the castle. Because the stone walls were so thick and the fire in the middle was so big, it was the warmest place to stay. After a party like this, the servants would not go to a different building. They would just wrap themselves in a woolen blanket and lie down right there on the floor. In the Middle Ages, people did not mind sleeping in the same room together. It made them feel safe and kept them warm. You begin by gathering the empty wooden cups and mazes from the long tables. They are scattered everywhere. Some are standing upright, but many have been knocked over, leaving sticky rings of ale on the scrubbed oak wood. You pick up a small wooden bucket to put the cups in. This is a micro-history detail called a piggin. A piggin is a very simple wooden pail with one of the wooden slats made longer than the others to act as a handle. It is light and easy to carry with one hand. As you drop the cups into the piggin, they make a soft thunk sound. The smell of stale ale and sweet apples is very strong here. Next, you look at the floor. The thick layer of rushes that you helped lay down earlier is now a mess. They have been stepped on by hundreds of feet. In some places, the green stems are crushed and brown. There are bits of bone from the meat, crumbs of bread, and even a few dropped ribbons from the dancers' clothes. Usually, the rushes stay on the floor for a long time, sometimes 4 months. But after a big feast like Christmas, the top layer must be cleared away to keep the room from smelling bad. You go to the corner and find a broom. It is not like the soft brushes we use today. This is a besom. A besom is a very simple tool made of a bundle of birch twigs tied tightly to a long wooden handle made of ash. You hold the handle with both hands. It feels rough and sturdy. You begin to sweep the top of the rushes, moving the loose bits of rubbish into a pile. The twigs make a shush sound as they move across the floor. It is a very relaxing sound, like the wind moving through dry leaves. Every time you sweep, a little bit of dust rises into the air, dancing in the light of the dying fire. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just stand and watch the dust. The fire in the hearth is now just a pile of glowing red eyes hidden under a blanket of white ash. A single beam of very pale, grey light is coming through the high windows. It is the first hint of the morning. You watch the tiny spakes of dust floating in that grey light. They move in slow, lazy circles, looking like tiny stars. The hall is so quiet now that you can hear the crackle of a single coal as it breaks apart. You feel a sense of peace. The party is over, and the work of the day has not yet begun. This is the quietest time of all, the bridge between the night and the morning. You continue your work, moving the pile of rubbish toward the door. You find a large wooden tray and use a flat piece of wood to scrape the mess onto it. You see a small silver button that must have fallen off someone's coat. You pick it up and put it on the high table so it can be found later. You also find several large bones. You put these into a separate bag to take to the dogs later. Nothing is wasted here. The broken bread will go to the birds or the pigs. The crushed rushes will be taken to the garden to rot and turn into food for the plants in the spring. The work is slow and steady. You move from one end of the hall to the other, straightening the benches and making sure the trestle tables are steady. Your back is starting to ache a little bit, and your arms feel heavy. You have been awake for many hours now, and the tiredness is starting to catch up with you. But you don't mind. There is something satisfying about making the room look neat again. You are putting the world back in order after the fun of the night. You find a damp cloth and wipe down the high table where the Lord and Lady sat. The wood is cool and smooth. You think about the food that was here, the boar's head, the meat pies, and the fine white bread. Now, the table is empty and clean. You look at the silver salt cellar sitting in the center. It is still there, catching the grey morning light. It looks very lonely now that the feast is over. You move it to the side so it doesn't get knocked over. The servants sleeping on the floor start to move a little bit as the light gets stronger. One man pulls his blanket over his head to hide from the dawn. Another stretches his arms and lets out a long yawn. Soon, the kitchen will be busy again, and the smell of fresh bread will replace the smell of the party. But for these few minutes, the hall is yours. You have finished the main cleanup. The floor is neat, the tables are straight, and the rubbish is all bagged up. You walk to the big oak door and push it open. The cold air from the courtyard rushes in, smelling of snow and ice. It feels wonderful after the heavy, warm air of the hall. You carry the bags of rubbish out and leave them near the gate for the carter to take away later. You look up at the sky. The stars are almost gone now. The sky is a pale, cold blue, the color of a robin's egg. The moon is just a thin white line on the horizon. You feel a deep sense of accomplishment. You have seen the night from its very beginning to its very end. You have watched the village sleep, helped the animals stay warm, and watched the people play. Now, you have helped the castle get ready for the new day. You pick up your staff and take a long, slow breath of the morning air. It is crisp and clean, and it tastes of the coming sun. You are the history watchman, and your work in the great hall is done. You turn away from the door and head toward the village well, your boots making a firm, steady sound on the frozen ground. The night shift is almost over, and the world is starting to wake up. You leave the big stone gateway of the castle and step back out into the open world. The transition is quiet. Behind you, the castle is settling down to sleep after its night of fun. But ahead of you, the village is still wrapped in a deep, dark blanket. The moon has sunk so low that it is hidden behind the tall trees of the forest, and the stars are starting to wink out as the sky turns from black to a very dark, misty grey. This is the darkest part of the morning. It is that strange time when the night is over, but the day is not yet truly started. Without the moon, you can barely see your own feet in the snow. To find your way back to your own small house, you need a light of your own. You reach into a stone nook inside the gatehouse and pull out a fresh torch. A simple historical fact you should know that in these times, there were no lights on the streets, there were no lamps on the corners, and no glowing windows to guide you. If you had to walk at night, you had to carry the light with you. If your light went out, you were lost in a world that was perfectly black. Most people simply stayed inside, because the dark was too big and too deep to face. But you are a watchman, and the dark is your home. You take a small piece of glowing coal from the guard's brazier and touch it to the end of your torch. This brings us to a micro-history detail about how people saw in the dark. This torch is called a link. It is not just a piece of wood. It is made of several thick pieces of rope that have been twisted together and then soaked in a heavy, black liquid called pitch or tar. Pitch is a very sticky sap that comes from pine trees. When you light it, it does not burn out quickly like a normal stick. It burns with a big, bright orange flame that is very hard for the wind to blow out. As the pitch catches fire, a thick cloud of black smoke rises up. It has a very strong, sharp smell, like burning wood mixed with salt and earth. It is a smell that feels very old and very safe. The flame is not steady. It jumps and dances, making a loud crackle and hiss as the tar melts. You hold the wooden handle tight. You can feel the heat of the flame on the side of your face. Even though the air around you is freezing, the light from the torch is very bright, but it only reaches a few feet in front of you. Beyond that circle of orange light, the shadows are even darker than before. You begin to walk down the main street of the village. The street is narrow, with the houses built very close together. In the summer, this path is full of mud and rubbish, but now it is frozen as hard as iron and covered in a layer of white frost. Your boots make a sharp clack sound on the ground. The torchlight hits the walls of the houses as you pass. The walls are made of white mud and straw, and in the flickering light, they look like they are moving. The shadows of the wooden beams stretch out like long, thin arms, reaching across the path, and then vanishing as you move past. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just stand in the middle of the empty street. You hold the torch high above your head. You do not move. You do not breathe. You just listen. The silence of the village is very heavy. It is not the empty silence of the woods. It is a silence that is full of people. You know that behind those thin mud walls, your friends and neighbors are sleeping. You can almost feel the weight of their sleep. The only sound is the whoosh of your torch as the flame pulls at the air. You feel like a tiny island of light in a giant ocean of shadow. It is a lonely feeling, but it is also very peaceful. You are the only one seeing the village like this. As you walk, you have to be careful. The ground is uneven, and the torchlight can be tricky. It creates deep shadows in the holes and ruts of the road, making them look like solid ground. You use your wooden staff to poke the snow ahead of you, making sure it is safe to step. You see a cat sitting on a stone wall. Its eyes catch the light of your torch and glow like tiny gold coins. It does not move as you pass. It just watches you with a calm, steady look. You nod to it quietly. In the middle of the night, even a cat feels like a friend. You notice how the frost has decorated the houses. Because the air is so still, the frost has grown into long, beautiful shapes on the wooden doors and windows. They look like tiny silver ferns or feathers. In the light of your torch, the frost sparkles and shines. It is a beauty that no one else will see, because as soon as the sun comes up and the people open their doors, the frost will melt or be brushed away. You feel like you are walking through a secret gallery of art made by the winter itself. The smoke from your torch trails behind you like a long grey ribbon. You think about the link boys in the big cities. These were poor children who would wait at the gates of the city with torches just like yours. If a rich man wanted to walk home, he would pay a link boy a copper coin to walk in front of him and light the way. It was a hard job, running through the dark streets, but it kept people safe. Tonight, you are your own link boy. You are guiding yourself through the maze of the village. You pass the blacksmith's shop. The big wooden doors are shut tight and locked with a heavy iron bar. The forge is cold now, and the smell of coal and iron is faint. You remember the sound of the hammer from earlier in the night. A steady ring, ring that could be heard across the fields. Now, everything is silent. Even the air feels heavier here, near the big stone anvil. You move quickly past, your torchlight dancing off the frozen puddles on the ground. The puddles look like dark mirrors, showing a tiny version of your flame for a split second before you move on. You are getting closer to the village well now. This is the heart of the village, where everyone meets during the day to get their water and share the news. In the dark, the stone circle of the well looks like a low tower. You can see the wooden frame and the heavy rope hanging down into the black hole. You decide to stop here for a moment. Your torch is starting to burn low, the pitch dripping down the side in a slow, glowing glob. You tap the torch against a stone to knock off the burnt crust, and the flame flares up again, bright and hungry. The sky is definitely changing now. The grey is becoming a little bit lighter, and you can see the shapes of the trees on the horizon more clearly. The night shift is coming to an end. You have walked the walls, helped the cooks, fed the animals, and seen the people play. You have carried the light through the darkest hours of the year. Your feet are cold and your back is tired, but you feel a sense of quiet pride. You have done your duty. You have been the watchman. You take one last look down the long, dark street. The shadows are starting to pull back into the corners. The world is getting ready to wake up. You pull your new coat tight and start the last part of your walk. The torch in your hand is like a small piece of the sun that you have captured to keep the night at bay. You move toward the well, the hiss of the flame the only sound in the frozen morning, feeling the weight of the night slowly lifting from your shoulders as the first hint of the new day begins to touch the edge of the world. You come to a stop in the very middle of the village square. Here, the houses pull back a little, leaving a wide, open space. In the center of this space stands the village well. It is a low, round wall made of heavy grey stones. The stones are old and have been worn smooth by thousands of hands touching them over many, many years. In the day, this is the busiest place in the world. This is where people come to hear the news, to laugh with their friends, and to gather the water they need for their soup and their animals. But now, in the very early hours of the morning, it is a lonely and silent place. The torch in your hand is burning low, but it is enough to see the white frost that has grown over the wooden frame of the well. It looks like the well has been covered in a thin layer of silver fur. A simple historical fact you should know is that for a medieval village, the well was the most important thing of all. Most people did not have a stream or a pond near their house. They did not have pipes or taps. Every single drop of water for drinking, for washing, and for the cows and sheep had to be pulled up from deep inside the earth by hand. If the well broke, or if the water became dirty, the village could not stay. And in the winter, the biggest danger was the ice. If the top of the water froze into a thick sheet, the bucket could not sink, and the village would go thirsty. That is why you are here now. It is part of the watch to make sure the water is ready for the morning. You lean over the stone wall and look down into the dark. The smell that comes up from the well is very specific. It is a cold, damp smell, like wet rocks and deep earth. It is a clean smell, but it feels heavy. You cannot see the water at the bottom because it is too far down, but you can feel the chill of it rising up to meet you. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just lean there. You do not move. You do not make a sound. You listen to the way your own breath sounds as it echoes off the stone walls of the deep hole. It is a soft, hollow sound, like someone is whispering back to you from the bottom of the earth. You feel the weight of the night all around you, and for a second, you feel like you are the only person who has ever stood here. It is a very still and very deep moment. You reach out and touch the wooden handle of the well. This is a micro-history detail called a windlass, A windlass is a simple but very clever machine. It is a large, round log of oak wood that sits across the top of the well. It has a heavy iron handle on one side. A long rope made of braided hemp is wrapped many times around the log. When you turn the handle, the log spins and the rope moves down into the dark. The wood of the handle is cold and feels slightly damp from the frost. You can feel the rough grain of the oak under your palm. It is a solid, honest piece of wood that has done this job for a long time. You grab the heavy iron handle with both hands. It is freezing cold, and you can feel the chill go right through your leather gloves. You give it a slow push. The windlass makes a loud, complaining creak-groan sound as it starts to turn. The sound is very loud in the quiet morning air. It echoes off the houses and seems to travel 4 miles. You watch the rope as it uncurls from the wooden log, disappearing into the black circle of the well. You keep turning until you hear a sound from far below. It is not the soft splash of a bucket hitting water. It is a hard, hollow thud. This is what you feared. The water has frozen over. To fix this, you cannot use the bucket. The wooden bucket is too light and would just sit on top of the ice. You reach behind you and pick up a special tool that stays by the well for just this reason. It is a heavy wooden staff, almost as thick as your arm, with a large iron weight tied to the end. You call it the icebreaker. You tie the end of the well rope to the staff and use the windlass to lower it down. You move the handle carefully, feeling the weight of the iron pulling at your muscles. When the staff reaches the bottom, you let the rope go loose for a second. Then, you pull the handle up and drop it down again, over and over. You are using the iron weight like a hammer. Far below, you hear the sound of the ice breaking. It is a sharp, cracking sound, like a window breaking. Crack, thud, splash. You keep going until the sound changes. Instead of the hard thud, you start to hear a deep, wet splash. This means you have broken through the thick crust. You turn the handle to pull the heavy staff back up. As it comes out of the well, it is dripping with water. The water is so cold that as it hits the stones of the well, it starts to turn into ice almost immediately. Now that the ice is broken, you can get the water. You untie the icebreaker and tie the bucket back onto the rope. The bucket is a beautiful piece of work. It is made of small planks of cedar wood, held together by 3 thick rings of black iron. It is heavy even when it is empty. You lower it down into the dark. This time, you hear the sound you are waiting for aloud. Happy bloop, as the bucket tips over and sinks into the cold water. You start to turn the handle to pull it back up. This is hard work. A bucket full of water is very heavy, and you can feel the strain in your shoulders and your back. The windlass clicks and clacks as the rope wraps back around the wood. When the bucket reaches the top, you grab the handle and lift it onto the stone ledge. The water is perfectly clear, but it is so cold that a tiny bit of steam is rising from the surface. You look at your reflection in the water. In the orange light of your torch, your face looks dark and tired, but your eyes are bright. You dip your hand into the water, just for a second. It is so cold it feels like a burn. You quickly pull your hand out and wipe it on your coat. Your skin tingles and feels very alive. You take a small wooden cup from your belt and dip it into the bucket. You take a slow drink. The water is very sweet and tastes of the deep earth and the cold stones. It is the coldest thing you have ever tasted. It makes your teeth ache for a second, but it wakes you up completely. You feel the cold liquid move all the way down into your stomach. It is a clean, honest feeling. You realize that this water is a gift from the earth to the village. Without it, there would be no life here. You feel a deep sense of respect for the well and the work it does every day. You pour the rest of the bucket into the large stone trough that sits next to the well. This is for the village dogs and the birds to drink from in the morning. You hear the water slosh and gurgle as it fills the trough. The sound is very peaceful. You have done your job. When the first woman comes out of her house in an hour to get water for her family's breakfast, she will find the ice broken and the bucket ready. She won't know that you were here in the dark, breaking the ice with your heavy staff. But that doesn't matter. You are the watchman, and this is your service to the people. You look up at the sky. The grey is getting paler and paler. The stars are almost completely gone now, with only the bright morning star still shining in the east. The world is starting to take on its real colours again. The houses are no longer just black shapes. You can see the brown of the wood and the yellow of the straw. You pick up your torch, which is now just a small, flickering flame on the end of a blackened stick. You take one last look at the well, the water in the trough already starting to steam in the cold air. You feel a sense of quiet joy. The village has its water, and the day is nearly here. You turn away from the square and start the walk toward the edge of the fields. There is only a little time left before the sun rises, and you want to be there to see it. Your boots make a steady, rhythmic sound on the hard ground, and you move with a light heart, the taste of the cold, sweet water still fresh in your mouth. You leave the village square and walk toward the low stone wall that marks the end of the gardens and the start of the great open fields. The torch in your hand finally flickers and dies, leaving only a thin trail of grey smoke that smells of burnt pine. You don't need the fire now. The sky has turned into a beautiful, deep violet, and the world is becoming clearer with every breath you take. You find a large, flat stone near the wall and sit down. You lean your staff against the rock and pull your new woolen coat tight around your chest. This is the time to sit and wait. The wind has picked up again. It is coming from the north, traveling over miles of frozen forests and snowy mountains before it reaches you. It is a high, lonely sound. It does not howl or scream. It makes a long, steady whoosh. It moves through the bare branches of the willow trees by the stream. You can hear the dry reeds in the ditch clattering together like small wooden sticks. The wind is the only thing moving in the whole world. It feels like the breath of the winter itself, cold and ancient. A simple historical fact you should know that people in the Middle Ages believed the wind carried voices from the past. On a midwinter night, they thought the wild hunt might be flying through the sky on the back of the wind. They believed that spirits and old kings were out there in the dark. But sitting here now, you don't feel afraid. The wind doesn't feel like a ghost. It feels like a giant hand cleaning the world, blowing away the old year to make room for the new one. It is a strong, honest wind that makes you feel small but very much alive. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just listen to the different sounds the wind makes. You close your eyes. You hear a low whistle as the air passes through a crack in the stone wall. You hear the soft hiss of the snow being blown across the frozen ground. It sounds like sand moving over glass. You hear the deep thrum of the wind hitting the heavy oak door of a nearby barn. Every sound is sharp and clear because the air is so cold and still. You feel like the wind is telling you a story about all the places it has been. It has touched the high mountain peaks and the dark surface of the sea. Now, it is touching your face. It is a very peaceful and very big feeling. To keep your hands warm, you reach into your pocket and pull out a small object. This is a micro-history detail called a hand warmer or a warming ball. It is a small, hollow sphere made of punched iron. Earlier, while you were in the Great Hall, you put a few glowing coals inside it. The metal has soaked up the heat and stayed warm for a long time. You hold it between your palms. It feels like holding a small, warm bird. The heat seeps into your fingers, taking away the stiffness from breaking the ice at the well. You can smell the faint scent of the wood coal inside, a cozy smell that reminds you of home. You look at the thick stone walls of the castle behind you. They look like a giant grey mountain in the dim light. You think about how many winters those stones have seen. They have stood there for hundreds of years, and they will be there long after you are gone. The wind hits the stone and moves around it, unable to break through. Inside those walls, the people are safe. They are warm in their beds of straw and fur. They are protected by the stone and by the work you have done throughout the night. You feel a sense of pride in the walls. They are the shield of the village. The sky is changing again. The violet is turning into a soft, smoky blue. The stars have all vanished now, except for one very bright one low on the horizon. You watch the way the light catches the frost on the fields. The world looks like it is made of silver and glass. Every blade of grass is a tiny, frozen statue. You reach out and touch a tall piece of dried hemlock near the wall. It is covered in ice crystals that look like tiny diamonds. When you touch it, the ice tinkles and falls away, looking like silver dust in the morning light. You think about the long 12 days of Christmas that are just beginning. There will be more feasts, more songs, and more games. The village will be loud and happy, but you will always remember this hour. You will remember the sound of the wind and the feeling of the cold air in your lungs. You realize that the winter is not just a time of death and cold. It is a time of quiet strength. It is a time when the world rests and gets ready for the spring. The wind is not an enemy. It is just a part of the cycle. Your feet are starting to feel a bit numb, so you stand up and stamp them on the ground. The sound is loud in the quiet air. Thump, thump, thump. You walk a few steps along the wall, watching your breath turn into a white cloud. The cloud stays in the air for a long time before the wind pulls it away. You feel very strong. The night shift has been long and hard, but your body has held up. You have the strength of the freeze wool on your back, and the warmth of the cider still in your memory. The wind lets out a long, low sigh, and then drops away for a moment. In that second of perfect silence, you hear a sound from the village. It is a rooster crowing. The sound is thin and far away, but it is the first sign of the morning. Cock-a-doodle-doo. It is a brave sound, a small bird challenging the giant winter night. You smile to yourself. The rooster knows the sun is coming, even if it hasn't appeared yet. He is like you. He has been waiting in the dark, and now he is ready for the light. You sit back down on your stone and hold your warming ball. The sky is getting brighter every minute. The blue is turning into a very pale, cold yellow. You can see the individual trees in the woods now, and the shapes of the cows in the distant fields. The world is coming back into focus. You feel a sense of relief, but also a little bit of sadness. The night was yours, a secret world of shadows and stars. Soon, the world will belong to everyone again. You take a deep breath and let it out slowly. You are ready for the end of your watch. You have seen the frost, the fire, the music, and the wind. You have kept the village safe and the heart of the castle beating. You feel a deep, quiet happiness. You are the history watchman, and the winter wind has been your companion. You turn your face toward the east, where the sky is starting to glow with a soft, pink light. The longest night is almost over, and you are there to witness the birth of the new day. You leave the stone wall and walk back toward the castle for the final time this night. The sky is now the color of a pale pearl, and the shadows are retreating into the very corners of the buildings. You enter the inner court and find a small, quiet room that sits just off the chapel. This is the room of the eternal light. Usually, this room is only used by the monks, but on this final night of the midwinter watch, you have been asked to help. You step inside and close a heavy door. The room is very small and perfectly square, built of the same grey limestone as the rest of the castle. It is very quiet here, far away from the wind and the waking sounds of the courtyard. In the center of the room is a long wooden table. On this table sit 12 tall candles. They are made of the finest, purest beeswax, the color of pale summer cream. A simple historical fact you should know is that these 12 candles represent the 12 days of Christmas. Each candle was lit on its own night, starting from the very first night of the feast. They are a way of counting the time and keeping the light alive through the darkest part of the year. Now, as the morning of the final day approaches, all 12 candles are burning together. They have been burning 4 hours, and they are nearly at their end. You walk toward the table, your boots making no sound on the smooth stone floor. The air in the room is warm and very sweet. It smells of honey and clean wax. It is a very different smell from the sharp smoke of the torches or the heavy scent of the kitchen. This is a gentle, peaceful smell. You see the 12 flames. They are small and steady because there are no drafts in this room. They look like 12 little golden petals. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just sit on a low wooden stool and watch them. You do not move. You do not speak. You just watch the way the wax melts and flows. You feel like you are watching the very end of the night itself. It is a very soft and holy moment. As you look closely, you notice a micro-history detail about the candles. Each one is standing in a pricket made of dark, hammered iron. But beneath the candles, the table is covered in a layer of fine, dry sand. This is a very clever way to keep the room safe. If a candle were to fall or the hot wax were to spill, the sand would catch it and put out any spark. You reach out and touch the sand with your fingertip. It is cool and grainy, feeling like the beach in the middle of summer. You see the tiny drips of wax that have fallen into the sand, looking like little white pebbles. The candles are very low now. Some of them are only an inch tall. You can see the wick, the small piece of twisted linen that holds the flame. The wick is glowing red at the very tip. The wax is melting into a small, clear pool at the top of each candle. Sometimes, a tiny bead of wax escapes and runs down the side like a tear. It moves slowly, cooling as it goes, until it becomes a solid white line. You watch one candle in particular. It is the first candle, the one that represents the beginning of the season. It is the shortest of all. The flame is starting to flicker just a little bit, even though the air is still. It is almost out of fuel. You think about the 12 days that have passed while these candles were burning. You think about the dragging of the Yule log, the singing in the church, and the dancing of the Lord of Misrule. You think about the quiet walk you took through the woods and the cold water you pulled from the well. All those moments are held inside these 12 flames. As the candles burn down, the memories of the night are being tucked away, ready to be kept in your heart until the next winter. You feel a sense of completion. You have seen it all, and you have kept the light safe. The light in the room is changing. The grey morning light from the small, high window is becoming stronger. It hits the stone walls and makes the golden glow of the candles look pale and thin. The world of the day is coming to take over. You see the second candle's flame give a small pop and then go out. A thin, curling ribbon of white smoke rises from the blackened wick. It smells sweet, like a summer field. Then the fourth candle goes out, and then the seventh. One by one, the 12 days are ending. You use a small silver tool called a snuffer. It looks like a tiny metal hat on the end of a long handle. You do not want to blow the candles out, as that would be rude to the light. Instead, you gently lower the snuffer over the last few flames. One by one, you trap the heat and the light inside the metal. Each time, there is a tiny hiss and a puff of sweet smoke. Finally, only the last candle is left. This is the 12th candle, the one for today. You leave it burning for a moment longer. It is the bridge between the night that is gone and the day that is starting. You look at the empty table. The 12 small piles of white wax look like tiny snowy mountains. The room feels cooler now that the flames are gone. You feel a bit of the tiredness finally sinking into your bones. Your job is nearly finished. You have guarded the light until the sun was ready to take its place. You feel a deep sense of respect for the simple beeswax and the linen wicks. They have done their work well. They have been the quiet companions of the night shift. You stand up and stretch your arms. You can hear the sounds of the castle waking up now. A door slams somewhere in the distance. You hear the clatter of a bucket and the shout of a stable hand. The world is becoming loud and busy again. You take one last breath of the honey-smelling air. You feel peaceful and ready to face the morning. You have done your duty. You have been the watchman of the long dark. You walk to the door and open it. The courtyard is full of a bright, cold light. It is not the gold of the candles. It is the silver blue of a winter dawn. You step out, and the fresh air hits you, making you feel awake and strong. You pull your new coat tight and look back at the small room. The eternal light is resting now, waiting for the next year. You turn away and walk toward the main gate. The memory of the 12 golden flames still glowing in your mind as you prepare to see the sun rise over the world you have guarded so well. You walk away from the small room of candles and head toward the main stairs of the gatehouse. Your body feels very light now, as if the tiredness has turned into a soft, fuzzy cloud. You climb the stone steps one last time. They are the same steps you climbed at the very start of the night, but they feel different now. The stone is no longer hidden in the dark. You can see the grey and brown colors of the rock. You can see the small green mosses living in the cracks. The world is coming back to life. You reach the top of the wall and walk to the spot that faces the east. You lean your arms against the cold stone of the battlement. The frost is still there, thick and white, but it is no longer silver. In the new light, it looks like pale pink sugar. You take a long, slow breath. The air is the cleanest it has been all night. It smells of ice, dry grass, and the faint, sweet smell of distant wood smoke. You stand perfectly still, and for the first time, you can see the horizon clearly. It is a long, straight line where the white fields meet the soft blue sky. A simple historical fact you should know is that the people of this time saw the sunrise on this day as a great victory. To them, the sun was like a king returning from a long war against the dark. Every day for months, the sun had been getting weaker and the nights had been getting longer. They worried that the world might stay dark forever. But now, they know the light has won. The sun is coming back, and with it, the promise of spring, new lambs, and green leaves. This first light is the most hopeful thing in their world. You watch the edge of the world. A thin line of bright, glowing gold appears. It is so small at first, just a tiny spark on the rim of the earth. But as you watch, it grows. It turns into a long, burning ribbon of fire. The light hits the tops of the oak trees in the forest, making them glow like they are made of bronze. It hits the high tower of the castle, turning the grey stone into a warm, golden orange. Then, the light reaches you. You feel the first tiny touch of warmth on your face. It is very soft, like a gentle hand, but after the long, freezing night, it feels like a miracle. You reach into the leather loop on your belt and pull out a tool you have carried all night, but have not used. This is a micro-history detail called the watchman's horn. It is a simple instrument made from the curved horn of a large cow. It has been polished until it is smooth and dark, and the tip has been fitted with a small piece of shaped wood. You lift the horn to your lips. The horn is cold, and it has a faint, earthy smell. You take a deep breath and blow. The sound that comes out is deep and steady. It is a long, low drop that echoes across the courtyard and out over the village. It is not a loud or scary sound. It is an honest, solid sound that tells everyone the night is over. It tells the people in the kitchens to start the fires. It tells the stable hands to wake the horses. It tells the sleeping village that the watchman has done his job and the world is safe. You feel the vibration of the horn in your hands and in your chest. It is the final note of your night shift. You take a moment of atmospheric silence to just watch the sun climb higher. You do not move. You do not blow the horn again. You just stand there in the golden light. The silence now is very different from the silence of the midnight bells. It is a busy silence. You can hear the first birds starting to chirp in the hedges. You hear the clink of a metal bucket from the stables below. You hear the crunch of snow as someone opens their front door in the village. The world is waking up, and it is beautiful. You feel a deep sense of peace. You have seen the dark, and you have seen the light. You are tired, but your heart is full. You look down at the village one last time. You see the small houses with their thin lines of smoke. You see the church tower standing strong. You think about old Agnes under her brown blanket and the little boy who will find his wooden horse. You think about the dogs in their warm straw and the cows chewing their extra hay. You have been their guardian through the long dark, and now you can let them go. The sun is high enough now that it is starting to melt the frost on the stone wall. Tiny drops of water are sparkling like jewels. You turn away from the view and walk back toward the stairs. You move slowly, feeling every year of the history you have just walked through. You feel the weight of your new frieze coat and the small silver coin in your pouch. They are your rewards for a job well done. You walk down the stone steps, and with every step, you feel the world getting louder and warmer. The night shift is over. You have kept the watch, and the morning has come. You feel a sense of quiet joy as you reach the bottom and walk toward the gates. The world is turning a soft, golden yellow now. The long, deep shadows of the night are shrinking away, hiding back in the corners of the stone walls where the sun cannot reach. You can feel the heaviness in your eyes, a gentle weight that tells you it is time to find your own bed of soft straw and warm wool. The air is getting a little bit thicker with the smell of breakfast fires and fresh milk. It is a safe, happy smell. You are no longer the only one awake. You are part of a busy, living world again. The cold of the frost is fading, and the warmth of the new day is spreading across the fields like a slow, golden river. You can listen to the soft sounds of the village coming to life, the distant calling of the sheep and the gentle hum of voices. Everything is exactly as it should be. You have done your duty well, and the village is safe and warm. You can let go of the staff now. You can let go of the torch and the horn. The light is here to take over your work. Feel the warmth on your skin and the peace in your heart. You are safe. You are home. The long midwinter night is finished, and a new year of light has begun. Rest now, and let the sun watch over the world while you sleep. The sun is rising. The gates are opening. The watch is ended.